Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Mine's muted.
It's good to see you all on spring break. The Center, the Center for ETE, as you probably know, does a lot of great work in two areas to me. One is helping us all do great work in our teaching, but the other is also just fostering a community of people dedicated to reflective teaching practice. So we hope that that all happens for all of you here today, presenters and participants alike. My name's Tim, and I teach in music. If you've done anything with ETE, you probably know that that's Shelley there. And that any success of today's event is likely due to her. But I'm here as a faculty figurehead. We're going to well, the idea of the Springboard is that you get some new information, but that you also have some time set aside to implement it. That's a really important part of today's format. And so we'll start with some sort of talks. If this were a flipped classroom, this would be the out-of-class content delivery session. But because we didn't want to give you homework, it's in class. But we're going to treat it like that out-of-class time. We're not going to ask any questions during that time. We're just going to get content. I encourage you to take notes on any questions that you may have. You will get a chance to ask them later, just not during those presentations. After we've done that, we've got the schedule up here. Let me scroll down. So that will last till about 11:20, hopefully. After that, you're going to have the opportunity to meet with these various presenters and chat with them about their ideas and your ideas. For folks on Zoom, they will be coming for 10 minutes at a time to the Zoom meeting. For people in person, whoever's not in the Zoom meeting, you just walk up to them and chat with them. We're going to have a break and then a lunch. We didn't provide the lunch, sorry. And that's an opportunity to have a working lunch and start implementing some of your ideas. Then the group working session, and then we'll come back together at 2:45 as sort of a closing ceremony. Okay, is that all the announcements that I need to make as far as you know, Shelley? Okay, great. Well, thank you all so much for being here and for your dedication to your teaching practice. And we should just go ahead and get started with Nathan. Yeah.
So first thing, I just want to make sure my Zoom friends that you can see the thing that says course syllabus right now that I'm presenting. Is that thumbs up? Fantastic. That makes things easy. Well, welcome to your first day of class on spring break. I'm just going to talk about kind of the selecting and communicating your objectives to your class, right? So usually, typically on the first day of class, your students are going to walk in and they're going to expect you as the instructor to do what? That first day, what are we going to do? We're going to go over our syllabus, right? Right, that's the expectation is yeah, some of you know, if you're a good instructor, maybe not so much, right? It depends on how we do this. One of the things that I just kind of want to slip in is the first thing I do is a course description activity. So I'll actually have my course description that's pulled straight out of Banner, and I'll have them bring it in and I'll ask them, I'll put them together in groups, and I'll have them read the actual course description, and then I'll have them answer as groups these three questions. What learning outcomes should the course have? What activities or assignments would you create to assess your learning? And how would you grade the students? That's not much of what I slipped that in because what I've found is that having that conversation with them before I even bring up the course objectives gets them in the mind frame of what they're going to learn in class, and actually gives me really good ideas for improving the class and doing better. And so the other thing that then we'll move into is I map my course objectives with my idea objectives. And I create a table similar to this for them that shows me the course learning outcomes over there on the left. And then I map those to the idea learning objective that I feel is most relevant. And then I show them how I'm going to assess or how we're going to learn, what activities, assignments are we going to do for the class that map to that. And I have one of these handouts in the box that you'll be able to use. And the reason this is good is that it allows us to communicate with the students what it is they're going to learn. And you don't just do it on syllabus day. right? That you can do it throughout the course. And we found that if you do it throughout the course, the students engage a little bit more. So anytime I introduce a new assignment, whether it's, I bring that back up and I show it to them and we talk about it. Anytime that I ask them for evaluations, I bring that back up and I say, the reason that we're doing this quiz is to see if you're gaining a basic understanding, right? And it helps them remember. And then I definitely bring it up again before those evaluations at the end of the year. So I get feedback throughout the whole year or throughout the whole semester of what they're learning and how they feel like things are going. And I can adapt and adjust as needed. And so a lot of you might be wondering, well, which of the 3 or 5 course objectives should I be picking? So here are 3 questions to consider when you do that. The first is, how significant is it a part of the course? I found that like if you break it down into percentages, what percentage of modules, what percentage of activities, assignments are geared towards that? That's probably an objective that you could be selecting. The second question is, do you do specific things that help you accomplish that objectives, right? So how many assignments are there that are graded towards that? How many activities are you asking them to do? How many projects are geared towards that? That's probably one that you should be selecting. And then the final question I ask is, does the student progress on this objective a big part of their grade, or is it a big part of the evaluation process? Right? So what percentage of their grade is geared towards that assignment or that objective? So the most important thing though is to stay true to your course. I want to go back here real quick and I'm going to show you just what that looks like actually in my Canvas. Right, so this is my news writing class at the top here on the syllabus. There's that course description. We have that activity. And then you can just, from the worksheet that's in the box folder that you'll get today, you can actually put this in, copy and paste it right into your syllabus and be able to describe that and explain it. And then you take a screenshot of that, you put it on your slides and you show it to them each time that you're talking about it and bringing it up. That's just kind of an example of where that is. So there are other ways to kind of figure out, oh, well, which one should I be picking? Our office actually has a database that will show you what other instructors that have taught the exact same course that you're teaching have picked, or people in your department, et cetera. You can see that this is USU overall. It's interesting that most of us are picking 1, 3, and 4, as you can see there. So that's one way that our office can help, or if you want to know. The other thing you can look at is your past performance on objectives, right? So you can see what ones you have picked for that course, or even what other people have picked and how it went for their courses. And you can see which ones are they progressing on, which students do they feel like they're actually learning, because you might be surprised. You may find that if your course is one that is required for your program or a part of university studies, your learning outcomes may have already been picked for you and can be picked for you, right? And so you'll see here that I've added this little column here. This is for my Business 3200 class, which is a CI course, as well as one of the courses identified required for the program that they actually do their program assessment on. So I've added that column there. This one kind of all worked that they all match because it's just about communicating, and this is a communications class. But you may find that those objectives may already be selected, and it makes it a little easier when you look at your course within the program learning overall. That you will find that if it's hard for you, there's talk about maybe what you should do with that course. Those kind of things. So I'll just end with kind of a little demonstration here of as we look at my course, which of these objectives, idea objectives, would you select as essential? If this were you were consulting me, which one would you pick? The essential being it's the most important. This is for news writing, but just looking visually. Mike, why the second one? Yeah, there's a whole lot of course learning outcomes, and there's it's the biggest box. Let's literally visually, it makes the most sense, right? So that is one that I picked as essential. There's one more. Which one did you think it is? Might not know because it's this one right here, the developing skill in expressing oneself. It's not as many assignments, but the writing assignments and that portfolio are the biggest part of their grade. And so it's really what the course is about, is it's news writing. It's literally learning how to write. So that's just an example of how if you do this mapping, it will help you maybe design your course as well as communicate to your students what it is that they're going to learn. So here are the benefits that I found. Both myself and my students have focused on their learning more as I've used this table. I've increased the quality of my assignments, and the quantity of grading them, especially in a news writing or writing class, has gone down. It's been good. The formative feedback that I get throughout the semester on specific assignments, because they can see that table and we can talk about it, has been really good as well throughout the semester. And currently my response rates since implementing this are all at 100% for every course that I've ever taught, which is nice. And because of that, I get much better feedback from the students in the end. They're not just telling me that they think that I'm nice or that I'm got a nice blue shirt when I teach, but they're actually giving me feedback on specific assignments that are helping them learn or not helping them learn. I don't know. Is she allowed? I'm done. So you can ask a question afterwards and come talk to me. How about that? Okay. There you go. You almost did. Which is, as you know, a record miracle. Make sure you write that question. Okay.
Hi, my name is Chris Babbitts, and I am the Director of Education and Professional Learning in the currently named Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. If you know, I've never had my job eliminated by a legislator before or legislature before, but if you can go back and read some of the president's emails to see where we're going. I want to talk about using backwards design, which can honestly make so much of your job easier. And so what is backwards design? It's a framework developed by Wiggins and McTee, also known as understanding by design. And it is about planning backwards, starting with the end in mind. What do you want your students to emerge from the class with, not only content-wise, which a lot of us are content experts, right? But skill-wise, what is something that they could show off? I oftentimes will say this, you know, I'm first generation college grad. My mom never wanted to read any of my research papers because honestly, that's boring. But she wanted to look at all of the projects and that kind of thing. So like, what do you want them to emerge with? And I say that as a trained historian in history. The capstone project is writing a 25-page paper. So I want those history majors to have more fun things to show their parents as well. And so there's 3 stages to backwards design. So if you're thinking about planning from the end goal. So first is establishing desired results. So we have established learning goals and outcomes. So we already got to see some examples of learning outcomes, but also got to see how they match to everyone's favorite thing, the idea evaluations. I know they're everyone's favorite thing in this room. You are a tough crowd this morning. It's like no one's getting my horrible jokes here. But then developing essential. Yeah. So developing essential questions and enduring understandings is important. This is something that I imagine the breakout room will talk about because Tim shared, I think in the nicest way, that my session was the one people were least interested in the email. So I'm trying to warm it up here. So and so we can talk about how essential questions and enduring understandings can help things like mapping across required courses and having some kind of consistency, or the dreaded, like, I don't know what I'm doing because my PhD program taught me absolutely zero about teaching. I can research the crap out of everything, but this whole teaching thing kind of new to me. And so that way we can help our incoming faculty actually thrive and succeed and have, instead of having that horrible first semester where they're trying to figure things out. Stage 2 is determining acceptable evidence. I think Nathan did a really good job at thinking about that as well. And I think free is going to really build on some of that as well. But designing authentic assessments aligned with learning goals. I will go out of the way and say very few of my students are going to write a 25 to 40-page article. So I think more authentically, what is something that historical thinking skills can help people really do in the 21st century, especially with knowledge at everyone's fingertips, generative AI, soon to write better than most of us. And then also assessing students' understanding of those performance tests. So once again, Nathan, I think, did a really good job matching some of that. But then we get to the place where most people start, I think. And so this is planning learning experiences and instruction. So thinking about your engaging learning experiences, activities, selecting instructional strategies that you use. But then also, this is where you think more about content. So most of us start with content because most of us are content experts. Flip that around and start at the end, and then you can fill in the content. And then you don't feel the pressure that you have to teach everything because you've already identified essential questions. If it doesn't answer an essential question, it's out. You don't have to teach that. It's liberating. It's not stressful. It's actually great because you can be like, okay, if you really want to teach that, you redesign your essential question to actually be something that will address that. So this way you get a nice, neat, coherent course framed around an end goal and also framed around great questions that your students can answer, and those can be focused on the discipline, and that can be what we call pedagogical content knowledge, so the best way of teaching your discipline as well. And so here's just a little graphic from Wiggins and McKay's book, Understanding by Design, that kind of shows the process of this. And I think if you were to combine Nathan's slides and mine, I think you would be well on your way, better teacher training than most PhD programs provide. And there's lots of benefits, and I've already talked about some of them. One, you give your students a deep understanding of several questions, concepts. And this conceptual knowledge is much more important than memorization. So I get tons of students who take my classes who are like, history is just about remembering names, dates, and events. I'm like, oh no, I don't sit there with flashcards memorizing names, dates, and events. I would not have been a historian if that's what my job was. So also student engagement. You can think about how you can revisit questions from earlier parts of the class. Students will feel comfortable engaging with those questions. They'll also know that those are the questions that you're returned to. So you build confidence with students, and they will also increasingly engage with this. Also, this idea about authentic tasks and real-world engagement is really key. I know 0 Utah State students who really do like writing those long research papers, but you know what? There's other things like producing a podcast that airs on UPR, same exact stuff. There's going to be an argument, there's going to be use of evidence. With a podcast, which I never tell the students this, it's just a new word for radio segment. That would destroy the novelty. But that authenticity, that ability for other people to hear, that ability for their parents to listen too, I think makes it come alive for them and makes it so it's something that they get more excited about. But there's also teacher clarity. It provides you a clear roadmap of where you're going. I already hinted at this, right? That you don't have to teach everything of German fairy tales. I think that's Claudia more than you. But you don't have to teach everything because now you have your essential questions. You know where you want to go. And so things that don't add up into that are superfluous. And they might help with kind of this one. You have your essential questions that your students are trying to answer throughout the semester. These are going to be your enduring understandings. These are hopefully the things that the students remember about the class for years to come. And these are the things that are the most important about your class, your discipline. And then you can start to think about, well, this would be important to know and do, but it's not as important as these enduring understandings. And then you have the worth being familiar with, and this is key. I teach a history of sexuality class. I think I've had a total of 3 history majors in it. And so I'm just like, well, what are all the sociology and psychology students taking this class because they're doing a sexuality studies minor? What's more important for them? This also helps me kind of keep that in mind. History is a dying major. It may die in my lifetime. I'd actually be okay with that. So I'm not tenure track, so I have no skin in that game. But it helps me when this helps me really think largely about things also before any class session. I'm like, what is something that they really need to get out of this? Revisit an essential question, really tie it back. But then all the fun anecdotes and stories historians love to tell, I know that a couple of them can be reinforcing to the essential question, adding to conceptual knowledge, but they don't need all of them. So they just need to be able to answer the most important questions and be prepared throughout the semester for where I want them to end up through an authentic assessment. And now you know I'm done because it says thank you.
Both of them before. Thank you. Okay, then I will just pace forwards and backwards instead of side to side. Yep, that's it. There's a way to make it present, but I don't know how. So yeah, this doesn't matter that much. Yes, this will keep me. I don't pace because I am a pacer. Did. Won't stop. It's blurred. Oh, geez. Now there goes all my extra minutes. Okay. Actually, I shouldn't have said anything. I should have been more helpful with this. I just kind of let you get help from someone else. It's just the PDF. You could just open the PDF. Yeah. And then I can just push the arrows to go through it. Thank you, friend. Thank you, friend. I appreciate it. I could have given you a better document. So that's what I could have done. Okay. Hello, my name is Cree Taylor. I am a lecturer in the English department, and then I also work in the dean's office in Chas. And so I'm talking about picking inclusive course materials. And and that's what I'm doing. There you go. So here are the 4 things I'm hoping to talk about really quickly here. And I'm going to cover these 4, but then Tim shared some of the group's concerns about like AI statements and diversity statements and late work policies. I have like a treasure trove. So that's my teaser to tell you to come and talk to me. So I'm not sitting all by myself, but I do have examples to help answer those questions in more detail. So I wanted to start off by just defining this word inclusive. So our currently named DEI website says that inclusive means to ensure the presence and contributions of all groups are integrated equitably into the Aggie family. Inclusion means that different perspectives and experiences are welcome, valued, and included. And then I like this definition provided by the Cornell Center for Teaching Innovation. Inclusive teaching strategies refer to any number of teaching approaches that address the needs of students with a variety of backgrounds, learning modalities, and abilities. These strategies contribute to an overall inclusive learning environment in which all students perceive to be valued and able to succeed. And I highlighted like students and succeed because I feel like that's the whole goal here. And that's the goal of inclusive teaching and inclusive teaching practices. But that's also the goal of making sure your syllabus is inclusive. I would like you all know this, but to keep in mind that the syllabus is often the student's first exposure to your course. As much as we like to think they click around in Canvas, they probably don't. And as much as we like to think they really read that course description, they probably don't, right? This is just, I need this class and aligned with my course schedule, so here I am. So knowing this, you can do simple things in your syllabus design to help the students feel like they're welcome in your classroom space. And you'll also want to think about, like I listed, those course readings, examples, and other supplemental materials that you choose to fill out your backwards design. so that the students know that you are an inclusive instructor that values their success. So here's my disclaimer, and I always give this. I'm going to share some ideas with you, but you please have to know that you need to do what works best for you. So sometimes I sit in these sessions, I'm like, that's awesome. And then when I actually get back to my office, I'm like, I can't do that based off of whatever it is, my own teaching philosophy, my values, the purpose that my course serves in the department, right? My content area. And then some things just work based off of my positionality, right? Who I am as a teacher and who I embody as a teacher. So as I give you these ideas, think about what makes sense for you. This is just stuff that's made sense for me. So this is a snip. I used the snipping tool, go me, to take a snapshot of the first half of the first page of my syllabus. Those of you that like really visual syllabi are probably looking at this being like, how student friendly is that? And maybe it's not that student friendly, but doing a visual syllabus that just has like icons and things students can click on, I can't do that. And I'm not going to do that. So this is what mine looks like. But what I wanted to show you here are just a couple of things. So I've listed my name. I've also put my pronouns here. Just having those there is an inclusive practice, especially for our students that use, well, whatever pronoun, all students use pronouns. So our students that are members of the LGBTQ+ community that are navigating their pronoun and their identification, just having that there is helpful. Those of you that use images, having some type of rainbow imagery somewhere in your classroom is helpful because it's a signal to those students that you're there for them and that you're ready to support them. What else was I going to say about the syllabus? Office hours, that's what I was going to say about it. So office hours, and this one's kind of fun. So this says office hours here because I haven't fixed this, but I did change it to call them student support hours. I'm playing with terms to help my office hours seem more inviting. And here's a list that I got from the internet. Office hours, drop-in, student support, visiting hours, or open office hours. Just some type of language that so the students know that those hours are for them. Even just like putting the word student in there is helpful and more inclusive to students to let them know that you're there for them. This is a land acknowledgement for the Logan campus, but there's an overall USU acknowledgement, and then there is also a land acknowledgement for almost all of the specific campuses throughout the statewide system. And I think that's also something great to include. And for me, I teach writing and composition. So this also provides me a good opportunity to kind of talk about the history of land grant institutions and the history of writing, right? Because composition classes were developed because everybody sucked at writing except for the people that were already there. Like our courses were developed as gatekeeping courses. Now they've changed, but having this there helps me talk about all of that with my students right at the beginning. The other thing that I like to point out is my boundary that I have underlined it and bolded, and I should just italicize it too. I set a very clear boundary with my students about when they can expect me to talk back to them outside of class time. So this just says, if you email me, you need to let me have at least 24 hours, a full day. And if you send me an email after 5, it's not going to get responded to until the next day. And if you send me an email over the weekend, I'm not going to read that email until Monday. And I tell them, because I have 4 little kids, I usually show a picture of my children. What happened to me? I have little kids. So I'm like, when I'm not here with you, I'm with them. So that is my boundary. You email me at 5:01, I'm sorry. You're not going to get responded to until the next morning when I wake up to do my work. And they are very respectful of that. And I think me setting that boundary and then also allows them to set boundaries with me, right? And we have that communication. So that's been really helpful. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was content. And here are some things that I would like you all to think about as you're revising your syllabi. So inclusive readings. Are the students reading about your content area from folks with a variety of backgrounds? There are content experts of every identity in every field. Are you highlighting and celebrating their voices in your classrooms as well? The second one, diverse perspectives. Do you make space for lived experiences and shared knowledges in the classroom? That's also very important. And I'll talk about those two in more detail. And then the other two, I'm assuming some other people are talking about those, so I'm not going to. But accessibility, is the Canvas course design accessible to all of your students? Can they navigate it well? And assessment design. Do you offer a variety of methods for students to demonstrate what they have learned? Or are you just relying on the same method every single time because that's what you're used to? Okay, so I went through my comp classes as English 2010. I teach it every fall and spring. And I just took all of my readings and I went and found pictures of the authors and put them on this slide. When I did this a couple of years ago, this slide did not look this way. And I made really active changes to making sure that I'm choosing a variety of perspectives in my course readings. So these two are the authors of our textbook, these two. And then all the rest of this stuff is supplemental reading. essays, podcasts, websites, short stories, different things I incorporate to help my students study argument and rhetoric. And so just having the picture here for me is like, okay, this is a visual. Am I missing anything? Are there perspectives that I don't have? And then whenever I introduce a new reading to the students, I put the picture of the author on the slide. Hey, here's what you're reading for next class. Here are authors, and I put them up there on the slide. So then the students also know. And if these authors self-identify into different identity groups, I state what they are. So Gloria Anzaldúa, she identifies as a Chicana and also as a lesbian and as a member of the queer community. And I say that to the classroom so they know who we're reading and what's going on. That's that element of there are experts of every identity in every field. Are you bringing their voices into the classroom? This is the second thing I'm going to kind of share in more detail is diverse perspectives. So this is Patricia Hill Collins, and she is a sociologist, pioneered Black feminist thinking. And then I always say this to my students, and this one is still alive, because a lot of the ones I reread are dead, but she is still alive. And what Black feminist thought gives us, and I tell this to my students as well, is it encourages us to recognize that we should include a variety of perspectives in the course readings, but we should also invite our students to participate in the knowledge-making process. Bell Hooks talks about this in her Engaged Pedagogy book. Freire, I can't say his name, the pedagogy depressed guy with the glasses. He also talks about shared knowledges and lived experience. And what I like that Black feminist thought gives us is that she invites us to reimagine the intellectual and the academic as being able to be people who exist outside of academic spaces, because for so long, Black women did not exist in academic spaces, and yet they had these wealth of knowledge. And so I like to bring this to play to help us think a little bit more critically about whose voices we're including and why. And if there are groups that are producing really great stuff, but they just don't have the PhD, can we still incorporate their perspectives into the classroom? Last one. So other considerations, just making sure that your Canvas course is accessible. Again, I think other people are going to talk about this, but I just wanted to kind of put this up here in your brain as part of designing an inclusive syllabus and designing an inclusive class. And then also with your assessment design. So yeah, you can come chat with me. I have better examples about how to make your syllabus a little bit more inclusive. A lot of the feedback that I get on my course evaluations is that they liked that they got to read a bunch of different people from a bunch of different backgrounds. This is a writing class. I'm like, well, didn't you like that you learned anything about writing? Did you learn anything about writing? But that's me. Please keep in touch with me. I like to talk to people, especially about teaching. Send me an email, but if it's after 5, then you'll have to wait till the next day before I respond to you. Thanks.
You're logging in.
All right, everybody out there. All right, can everybody hear me okay? All right, super. I apologize for the mask. I'm getting over a cold, so I probably don't sound that wonderful. Okay, just a sec. Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of putting it. I have 2 of these accounts, so I get a, yeah. That's why I'm going in on Firefox here, so I don't mess anybody up. Okay. So I get to talk about the syllabus in Canvas. My name is Neil Legler. I'm in the Center for Instructional Design and Innovation, where we support faculty with things related to teaching and Canvas and all of that. Whatever you might need, we'll try to make your wildest dreams come true. So, okay, here we go. So I did put a little slideshow in here. It's nothing fancy, but just to keep me on track. A few syllabus tips for Canvas. Let me look at my time here. Okay. So a couple, and I'm going off some of the questions that I got actually from Tim. And I'm going to show you a little bit here about how you can use the syllabus template in Canvas if you want kind of a starting point for your syllabus. So I have two different courses up because we now actually have two different versions of design tools in Canvas. And so I'm going to do my best to show you both depending on which one you're using. First of all, I'd recommend that you use the Canvas syllabus tool to put your syllabus. Now you have options here in this tool. You can, if you really want to be a file person, you can just go ahead and insert a file link. And then students can have that file here on the page and they can open the file. But you don't have to do it that way. We do have a syllabus template that you can start with by clicking on the rocket ship icon that appears up in the corner. So let me do that one more time. I'm editing the syllabus. Come up here, click on the rocket ship, and that opens up our design tools. Also, I scroll down and I see I have a USU syllabus template. I'm going to click on that, and that's going to add some content. Now, one of the questions I got was, what if I don't want all of this stuff that comes in with this template? When this opens up and this, or when you add the template, then you get the USU syllabus tutorial that pops up. If you accidentally delete that and save and then come back later, let me just make that move here. You can still come and open up the USU syllabus tutorial, and that'll open that back up. That shows up below the box. And then you can come through here and it has some descriptions of what each of these blocks is meant to mean. And if you don't have course fees, you can remove the course fees block. If let's see, I think down here we have one on online. We have a few things down here. Oh, I thought earlier I had one on the online course fee, but I don't. But you can go through, you can just remove things you don't want. Let's find a couple other things. I do want my description. I do want my objectives. Okay, I'm going to remove the required and optional course resources. Anyway, you can go through and you can start removing things you don't want is the idea. Okay, and also let me go ahead and launch the design tools again. If you're using the syllabus tool here, everything gets added in as blocks. So I can just create and edit syllabus content and look at my blocks, and I can rearrange things as I want just by dragging and dropping or deleting things. Okay, so that is doing it with the old design tool set up in the old syllabus tool, which actually this is still the default. It's still the one that we're primarily supporting. The new one's fairly new still, and we're still doing write-ups on it. Let me go pull up the new syllabus, sorry. While I'm doing this, by the way, one of the things about working in the syllabus tool that I'd recommend is kind of keep a backup of your content over off to the side in another page or something. Unfortunately, the syllabus tool doesn't keep a history. So, but it's really useful to be able to have students go there and know where to find your syllabus. We also have reporting tools that will pull data from the syllabus that make it available for people who support students. So again, I would encourage you to use the syllabus tool, but keep a little bit of a backup of the content. All right, I'm going to switch to the new design tools here. It's a pretty similar idea, but if you're using the new one, it'll look a little different. So I'm going to open the rocket ship again. This time I don't have the two buttons down here. And you can see it looks a bit different. So here I'm going to go to template content. And then I have USU syllabus. And I can add an example syllabus template. This doesn't come with the policies. And if I want to remove or add blocks, I'm going to click on the 3-dot menu here on the right and arrange content. And then I can move things around and I can delete things I don't want. And then if I want to add the policies, those are hiding out down here under policy. USU, I can either add things individually or go for general university policies and add them there at the bottom. And actually, I think it adds them to the top with this one. So I'd have to come over here and arrange content and then them down. So there we go. Similar idea, but things are in a little bit different places. Okay, so some questions that came up. And I imagine there might be more questions here on using Canvas, using the design tools, using the template. I'll be here, happy to help answer your questions. Okay, one of the things that came up is my syllabus gets really long. What can I do to keep it from being so darn long? I would say you don't have to actually list the whole course schedule in the syllabus if you're using Canvas. In terms of using your modules, using your assignments and things like that. That can significantly reduce the length of your syllabus and make your syllabus a little bit easier to maintain semester after semester, because you're already going in, if you're using Canvas, and you're adjusting your Canvas due dates, you're adjusting your content, and students will hopefully be going into Canvas and finding that there. Also at the bottom of the syllabus, it's going to list for you all of your due dates already. So here I'm going to pull up an example of a course I taught last spring, which I broke my own advice and did put the syllabus schedule in there. But again, you don't have to. It'll put your course summary in there if you're keeping your dates. So you don't have to list all of that. Can if you want to, but you don't have to. And you can also be a little bit more concise if you're putting a lot of your assignment descriptions in your assignments in Canvas. So you don't have to necessarily plug everything, the whole course, into the syllabus. What about all those policies? Do I need to include them? After what I've had to deal with the last week, yes, you probably should. Because sometimes things come up and you just kind of need some of those statements. We just added one, actually. It's not showing up here, but it's down here. Appropriate use of Canvas and other IT resources. That gets into saying you may not use Canvas to message students all of your grievances about life, the universe, and everything. And you may not use it to sell stuff, and you may not, use it for class. So some of these, so this is kind of what I do. In my syllabus, I just get down to the bottom and say, and now for the typical university policies, which we should probably read from time to time, which is my invitation to them not to read it if they don't want to, but maybe to just take a glance at it. I've seen other teachers who have actually taken those and either put them in accordions or they've put them on another page and linked to them. But it is important to include those somewhere in your course. Okay, so as you're going, what is most essential? So if you're trying to balance clarity and length, what are some of the most important items? And I pulled these out of this Peer Review of Teaching book by Nancy Chisholm, which I know Provost Smith really likes. And this was just looking at the peer review kind of templates that she put in here for syllabi. So I pulled out some of the things that she's recommending we look for, including clarity. The clarity of your syllabus to your students, especially in setting up expectations around rights, students' responsibilities, maybe the consequences specifically of late work or of incivility or things like that. And while you're laying out consequences, having an appropriately positive tone. Developing rapport, having a positive attitude, being motivating, being inclusive, as Cree just talked about. It's important if your course is going to be challenging to make that kind of clear up front in the syllabus, communicating the challenge of the course. When we go and look at courses each term to see if they're ready to roll, we look to see if the syllabus is current. Does it say spring 2020 in there still? Because that's when you put your content online. Let's make sure it's up to date. And make sure that it fits with the curriculum, that our outcomes are laid out well, and that we're also setting up our environment for student engagement, including our office hours and things like that. So for me, it was useful. It's been useful. I have an online appointment scheduler. Just put that right up there. Say, go ahead, schedule an appointment with me. Here's my information. I didn't quite do the course objectives the same way Nathan did, but you can do something similar. Here's my idea objectives. Here's my course objectives underneath. Here's my link to go get the materials. Just try to make those things clear. All right, I think I'm out of time. Okay. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, you can.
Okay, so first of all, thanks to everybody who already spoke. I hope this just kind of builds on that. I took home like 5 new things from you, so woohoo. And it actually reminded me that I had a land acknowledgement and I took it off to like move it around and I never made it back on. So it's always a good idea. I think every semester I have to have one of these refreshers, even though I've been doing this for a hot minute, to make it constantly, like I move things around, then I forget to put stuff back on. So appreciate everything that's been said. Okay, high impact syllabi. This is a big deal for me. I've read a bunch of research about what students are looking for, particularly Gen Z, Gen Alpha, kind of this upcoming, what are the things that make them connect with you immediately? And also, to be totally blunt and frank with you, I've taken a lot of consideration for how students, the impressions they get about your course at the beginning of the semester, from your syllabi, from how you lead out, and what carries over into how they evaluate your course at the end of the semester. And one of the things I come back to again and again is a couple of pieces of research that they are highly motivated by a visual syllabus, by a syllabus that is exciting and engaging from day one. And I love you, Neil, more than my luggage, but the Canvas syllabus is not exciting. It does not put the excitement for a new class into me. And so what I do is I use Canvas as a holding spot. You've got to have something in Canvas that's accessible at all times in Canvas, but I build my syllabi in Canva, and I'm going to show you what that looks like because I develop a printable syllabus, and that's the syllabus that we go through on the first day, just like what Nate was talking about. That first day in class, I use my highly visual printable syllabus, and I use syllabi. I build templates in Canva so that I can just swap out the colors because that's so easy to do in Canva, so that every time I have to build a new course, which if you know anything about me, I've probably built 75 classes in the last 8 years. I don't know how this happens to me, but at any rate, I tend to build a lot of classes. And so I just have these templates so I can rotate the colors, put in a new picture of me, and they're ready to go. I condense information by using QR codes again and again and again. How do I get this so that it's succinct? It's in front of them. I'm just using QR codes, and we'll talk about that. And then using approachable language and transparency. Man, Cree did such a great job talking about that inclusivity and what makes it approachable. And then Chris also talked about making those objectives transparent, straightforward, so that students know what they're getting into. And then of course, Neil kind of talked about how we do that. So here's the situation. When we get into the breakouts, I brought a couple of examples of my syllabi to show you, but what I'm talking about is something that is highly visual. It's got pictures, it's got QR codes, I'm using different fonts. Again, I build these templates. It's not like every semester I sit down and build a new template. I do not have time or bandwidth for that, but I do invest when it's necessary on the front end so that to make this easier on the back end. I use Canva because of, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the USU Cooperative Extension has a deal for like $99 a year. You can get the big full-blown educator's version with all the bells and whistles. And you just call Mike Whitesides and say, I need to get the Canva subscription. If I give you my index number, can you make it happen? And he hooks you up with the cooperative extension version. So it's a little bit cheaper and you don't have to have an extension appointment. I do not. I just told Mike that I needed that. And they're super excited to have us on their group thing. They have a group account. And the other cool thing is that because they're associated with USU, you get all the fonts, all the colors of the official USU branding, right? So it's a sweet gig, folks, if you're interested in kind of going down this path and talking about it. I do use a printable syllabus. Like I said, it's engaging, it's in your face, it's on the first day of class. I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about here. Maybe you're going to let me get out. Let me just not mess around with this. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is my, this is an example of the syllabus that I use, as you can see. I make PDFs with hyperlinks. Once you're in Canva, you can actually share, you can save each page as an individual page, as a PNG so that you can have the graphics, or you can just save it as a PDF with hyperlinks already in it. They have graphs and charts that you can make. Like I say, I use grading scales. I put these little headers and footers that have cute little graphics, all the assignments. It just makes it so visually pleasing that students like it. And here's one. I just changed the colors out on this one every semester. But here's the beauty of Canva is that once you get all your parts and sections in there that you find to be critically relevant, I always have a course objective, and I'm doing exactly the process that Chris was talking about. I think about what are the course objectives, not just idea objectives, but the course objectives that I want to have in front of me. And then I build my course schedule at the end of this based on those questions. So each one of those course objectives, I come back and I'm like, this week, we're going to talk about course objectives 1 and 4. But then when I open that module in Canvas, I have a question that we're thinking about, that we're working towards. Those essential questions are really awesome. I also, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we use these things just to keep it so they're full color. We're using a lot of graphics, and I'm using hyperlinks and video to kind of move them forward. And in the next, so like I say, as I move through, I just kind of have a couple of different templates. I really don't have more than, I think I'm really right now using 3 different templates for all my classes, and they just kind of have a different color scheme. I try to pick color schemes that people who are colorblind can see. So some of that's can be a little bit different. I want to talk about QR codes. I struggle because I tend to be super wordy, and I like my students to totally understand what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, I can't move out of the square of, okay. But what I like to have is a little QR code. So on the very front page of all my syllabi, I have a QR code, and that takes them to a welcome video where I'm just like, welcome to the class. This is who I am. This is a little bit about my background. This is what you can expect. Here's the first 3 things you need to do before the first day of class, right? Or before the end of the first week of class. I also use QR codes. If it's a first year class, I walk them, I just get on my iPhone and I take them outside. Here's my building, here's where my office is. I love the idea of changing that to student support hours. I think that's an awesome idea. Assignment formatting. I have a quick QR code. If there's a specific thing that I want them to do about turning in assignments that normally I would take time to like wordily explain in my syllabus, I just have a little QR code that says this. It's also, if you're one of those people who's super into Easter eggs, right? And you leave little cues, or you have a syllabus quiz at the beginning of the semester, QR codes are awesome for that, because then you know you've gone through those videos and you've watched them. You can make them on your iPhone. If any of you took that AQ course, you know that, just you on your iPhone with a ball cap on, get it done. It doesn't have to be a professional video. It's just a way to walk them through it. Explaining late work policies. Anyway, plus in Canva, in the little left-hand sidebar, they have QR. You can make the QR code right in Canva. You don't have to go to a separate place. Canva will make you a QR code right in there. I want to have my last 90 seconds. I'm taking 90 seconds. Transparency. I love Canva because it allows me to use the same parts that are really, really working for me in all my syllabi across. So if I put it in a template, I can just copy and paste that right from page to page, and I can move those pages around. It's super easy to do. I love being able to make these kinds of transparency where you get to weight your assignments and really look at it. It becomes a nice visual. I think in Canvas, it's hard to make tables and have them always work out. It's a little bit like making tables in Word. And y'all, if there was a line in heaven for patience, I did not have the bandwidth to get in that line even. I came straight to the world. So I don't have any of that. So I just make all my tables and charts in Canva, so it's visual, they can print it, it's in front of them. Other elements that I've found to be very successful in that approachability, a human first statement. You're happy to come and steal it, I'll give it to you. I stole it from someone else. Using generative AI, dealing with citations, attendance policy, I just call it cold hard facts. I have a whole section on how to get an A in this class. Again, what Cree said, man, there's some really good stuff that was talked about today. That's all I got. But I've got these syllabi. You're welcome to come and look at them. I'm happy to share my templates. I don't have a beef with that. I actually don't have a problem with that. I think you get to, can I just show them one cool thing in Canva? I know you want to see this. Look, when you get in here, I know it's me. Look at you, they have these color palettes. And so once you get your template all set up, you can actually come into the design of your project. Wait. I want to go to branding, and you can actually just change up the color scheme with one click. It's not going to work, but I'll show you how to do it. Literally, you just come in, you're like, oh, look at all those options. Click, and it changes your fonts and your colors with one click in Canva. And then you have a brand new template with a different thing. but all the same words as last semester. And Neil will never know that all you did was change out spring. He'll be so impressed. Anyway, that's my spiel.
Okay, so those are all of our Ignite presentations. What we're gonna do next, and we'll do that at 11:10, so you have a second to get up for a second, go to the bathroom, stretch your legs, is the presenters are gonna get set up in the room. We're gonna have Cree move up a little bit. We're gonna have Nathan move back a little bit. And you guys are welcome for the next hour to visit with different ones. Last year we had it where you were set here for 20 minutes and then you had to move to somebody else for 20 minutes. We're going to let you guys be grown people and pick who you want to talk to and for how long for the next hour. When it comes to our online folks, what we're going to do is in this room over here, we're going to set up our speaker and then one speaker at a time in the order that they presented. We'll go and speak with our online crew to make sure that they get their questions answered and they get the FaceTime that they need. Okay, so we're going to get all set up and we'll do that starting at 11:10. Thanks, guys.
Hi, everyone. So I can talk about whatever you want. Any questions you have? Whatever.
So Nathan, I was curious because on the first day of class, I wouldn't call it similar, but I do have them break into small groups and talk about their expectations of the course of me and of each other. But I'm wondering, do you ask them verbatim what learning outcomes should the course have? I'm just curious because I think students might be like, what do you mean? Like how do you frame students in a way that makes it meaningful and that you have a relevant discussion?
Yeah, so the question itself is it says what should the learning outcomes for this course be, and by no means are students, all of them, equipped to have that discussion, but I keep it there so that when they hear that phrase, because a lot of the courses I teach are kind of the sophomore level, right? And so I see it as I'm trying to teach them for people that teach upper division classes so that they know what to look for and those kind of things. So I keep it that way, but when they have questions, it's mostly just discussion. Well, what do you want to get out of this? When we're done with this class, a lot of what Chris talked about, what do you want to be able to do? Why did you take this class is really the question that we're really asking. So, yeah, but I frame it around it as a learning outcome. We're going to talk about it like that so that as they progress through the university, they know what we're talking about.
Yeah, you're kind of socializing them toward that language. Yeah. And then you also ask like what activities or assignments they would create. So you're saying, how can we assess this? How can we make sure we do this? And
and how can we learn it?
Right.
I'm asking, how do you want to learn this, right?
Okay. And then you ask the students how they would grade. Okay, cool. Well, I'm curious what sorts of answers you get. Were you surprised the first time you did this? I have no idea what I'll get. I'm going to try this, but I'm like, I wonder how
It's helpful. It doesn't always necessarily mean I'm going to change the course that semester, right? Because I've made a plan and I've made the outcomes according to that plan, but I have pivoted. So for instance, the first time I did it, a few students were like, we want to do Kahoot quizzes. And I was like, all right. So I actually had my TA just make a couple of them to review readings and stuff from the weeks before. And I never would have done that. I'm not a Kahoot guy, but it's now something I've adopted. So that's a small one. A bigger example was, and on my slides there's actually links to the actual responses I've gotten from students for 2 of my courses.
Oh, cool. Okay, great.
Yeah, so I'll actually share with you guys. While I'm doing that, if other people have questions, feel free to jump in and I'll try to answer them if you had any. But so yeah, if you go into that, share my screen here. If you go into this box one, and then I put in a few, but this one here on my second slide, I guess faces are in my way. Those courses right here, these are actually links that will go to the responses that I got. And it's just a Google Doc.
Yeah.
That I say, go and type in your group 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And so let me just kind of rephrase what I get here, right? So how they want to be graded and what they want to do. Yeah, this is a good one. I always get the effort based or like grade according to how much we improve. And that's great because it sets me up to say, great, I'm going to ask you to do this assignment initially to see how good you are now. And that will help me grade you at the end. If that's the really kind of the grading that you want, because I get to have discussions with the class then of like, this is what you wanted, right? We talked about this and that kind of stuff.
but very rarely has what they've decided or what they've put on these things changed my course, because they're usually spot on with what I'm planning or
Yeah.
already planning to do. It's just,
Yeah.
it's reaffirming to me as well to do that with them. So
Yeah, that's cool. It's such a, I mean, in social work, Julie and I are in social work, and when we run groups, we want the group to decide for itself. And this is a way of giving them that, empowering them and giving them that agency so they feel like it's
Yeah.
theirs.
they get to know each other from day one. It's good. I had to slip that in this presentation because it's worked so well for me as far as the students understanding what it is we're doing in the course and having
I
outcomes.
love that idea. I struggle the first day. I'm always like, oh, I feel like I'm responsible to talk about the syllabus, even though it's not what I want to talk about. And so I do that activity, where they talk about expectations, but I like this idea much better.
So I wanted to speak to that a little bit because of the time. I wanted to fly through my stuff, but I don't bring up the actual syllabus except for at the end or at the beginning to say, if you want to follow along, go ahead. And you're going to read this later. But nothing, I never like actually read it. I never like go through it, right? My slides are the content that is necessary for the course. And a lot of the philosophy of how I teach. And I usually incorporate some kind of big, large activity that first day as well that shows them the type of learning we're going to be doing. So I don't recommend just reading, right? We've all been in the class where we've done that, or someone did that to us. But incorporating, it's the idea of a syllabus is communicating expectations and kind of having an agreement on what we're going to learn, but knowing that we might adjust. And so that's what my conversation the first day usually is. And I show them that with some kind of activity of learning that day. Other questions about writing course learning outcomes. I was going to present on that, but a lot of people, the email I got was they would like to know how to do idea selection more than actually writing. I know a few of you have actually already sat in my presentations about that kind of stuff, but anything else I can answer or things you'd like to see?
I am interested in how you write those learning outcomes. I have some in my syllabus that were in the syllabus when I started teaching a class 6 years ago, and I keep teaching it, and they need a refresher, and I don't really know how to do that.
Oh, that is the presentation I wanted to give, and we could do a full-on course about it, right?
Yeah.
I'm the same. The course outcomes that you see in my examples that today were all handed to me. None of them are my own, because I'm an adjunct instructor that just was handed a course. In fact, the first course I ever taught, they just said, we don't have any like defined ones. I'm like, this is a required class for the program, and you're not going to hand me like what you actually want me to. It was very surprising to me. I'm working with that program now. But yeah, so I'll give you a quick thought, and then I think if the group wants to jump in on how you do it as well, it's great. I don't have access to the presentation here, but I call them the ABCDs of learning outcomes. And there are resources online. NILOA, NILOA is a good resource that's free about how to write good learning outcomes. I am more than happy to sit down and work with you on those. My focus for my actual job at Utah State is to help write program learning outcomes. So I sit down with department heads and curriculum people, and we try to make sure. So that's where you start. Okay, so the first thing you need to start with is, where does your course fall in the learning outcomes for the whole program? If that's a hard discussion to have, then it's good because it'll inspire a discussion throughout the whole department. What are our program learning outcomes? Why does this course exist? Because your course should be tied to at least one of those to some degree, right? It might be tied to all of them to a high degree if it's a required or a capstone class. So first, look at your program learning outcomes. Each one of your website or department websites has program learning outcomes, right? So if I go to, let's go to CHAS real quick, just because I know where theirs is. So that's one, is look at program learning outcomes. And then I'll go through the ABCDs real quick, and I can send you some resources. Marie, I don't know where my pen went. I left it in there. So the A is audience, right? So for your course learning outcomes, audience is always going to be students who take this course, right? So you don't have to think about it that hard. Your B is the behavior. So what behavior do I want these students to be able to know, learn, do, kind of that thing, right? That deeper understanding, kind of what Chris talked about. What is the end goal? So your learning outcomes, a well-written one will have audience, behavior. Your C is condition. So condition would be basically everyone in the class or everyone that does this assignment, or it's the condition of which they're going to be able to do, or in this specific assignment, they will have this learning outcome. And then the degree is the mastery level. It's to what degree do we expect them to achieve or to show, demonstrate. I also use demonstrate rather than degree, that mastery, right? So if you have an audience, the behavior you want, the condition, and the degree, you've got a really good learning outcome. And now your course is designed for you. If one of the assignments you do is hard to plug in there, you probably shouldn't be doing it for your course, or you need to redo, like you said, your learning outcomes. So like I said, I got some other materials I can share with you on those, but I don't know if that's helpful, but I'll just show you real quick. Most departments, if you just go to like the college or the department and scroll to the bottom, they're usually buried. There's either like a blue link here that says assessment, or there's a link like this that'll say like department programs and assessment. So if you're new to your department or your department hasn't talked about this a lot, this is where you go to find out like, where does my class fit in, right? So I teach news writing. So we'll just have a look here, right? And then here's the assessment plan. Some programs, they won't be updated. And that's my job, is to make sure that they get updated, right? Others, right? So you can come in here and like, I can now see where my course fits into the overall program learning outcomes. So I teach a required course for this program. What is it that they want me to teach from that? And those are good discussions to have, especially if you are new to your department, or it's just good. It inspires some good discussion. So that was quick. And like I said, I'm happy to send some materials about actually writing learning outcomes. There's actually a worksheet that helps you go through the ABCDs, but that's just something that helps me.
That is very helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Anyone else? Other questions? I'll actually drop those how to write a learning outcome stuff in that same box folder with Shelley's permission. So
That would be awesome.
it'll take me too long to log in. In that packet, I gave you the actual template. It looks like this, right? It's got the course. Oh, you can't see it. Never mind. That gives you the actual, like, if you like the table that I just showed today, if you just copy and paste that table, like if you use Word Online or you use a Google Drive, or if you copy and paste, it'll just paste right into your syllabus. I'm happy to show you guys how to do that if no one has other questions. And that's just what I found easy. Not everyone has to use the table. I think there's other ways to do it, like Neil showed his and my other courses, but so let me just go in here. So this template right here, you can come into this and download it and or open it. I'm not logged in, so I can't open it. Well, I wonder if it'll work if I do. I don't have a mouse. Here we go. So like you can just copy this after you've filled it out. And then I'll just show you, you go into your canvas. This is probably in Shelley's. So let me, it should come to Still Me Away. Basically, you just, and then you hit edit that syllabus page that Neil showed. You hit edit and you can just paste that right in there. So you don't have to redesign it. You can have like a Word doc that you redesign to update for your different courses. Oh, she says I got 1 more minute. Anyway, anyway, it's helpful. And add as many columns to that thing as you want. I think that there's iterations that will work for your class and for visualizing to your students. But don't just talk about it on the first day, right? Like talk about this throughout the whole semester. I've seen a lot of instructors do cool things where they put their idea objectives and their course learning objectives at the beginning of every module, and they tie every assignment to it in Canvas. I haven't quite done that yet, but I think that's a great way to communicate with your students, like, this is what you're learning in this class. And that way your idea evaluations, that kind of stuff, are so much more meaningful because they're talking about specific assignments and things they did rather than the super stuff that doesn't help improve as a teacher. So I hope that's helpful. You guys can reach out to me in my slides. There's a QR code or a link to schedule a consultation about anything you want to talk about, whether it's interpreting your idea results or picking objectives or writing learning outcomes. Happy to do so.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Good luck.
Thank
Have a
you.
good semester and spring break. Thanks for all you do.
Right, so our next person to come talk with us should be Chris Babbitt.
Hello, all. Chris is coming. Did he have any problems that I should address with my computer, or was everything easy going? Perfect.
So where is everybody zooming in from? I'm on the Logan campus, so
I'm in Moab.
Moab.
Awesome. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Chris.
How you doing? They have us in like this side room. It's intriguing. This is not my real background. If you have any meetings with me, you know that I have fancy backgrounds oftentimes. So, but I discussed understanding by design. I was wondering what questions, comments, thoughts people had.
I really appreciated your distinction between enduring understanding, important to know and do, and worth being familiar with. I feel like I do get caught up sometimes, and I have so much that I want to cover, but only so much time that we can cover things in. I feel like this has already given me a lot of clarity. I can already think of things that I can spend less time on or maybe toss because they're worth being familiar with, but they're not the enduring understanding. So I just really appreciated that distinction.
And I see that you have a Post-it on your wall, and one easy thing to do would be to write down a lot of the things that you are teaching in a class and group them and kind of those things, and then you can physically move them around. I used to do that when I was a teacher educator at Columbia University. We would do that for lesson planning. And so we would get, it was a master's program. We get a lot of really accelerated history majors who thought that all of their students would be as interested in history as they were when they went to Stanford. And I was like, okay, now we need like, this seems like an interesting anecdote, more than tied to a cohesive lesson. So how do we do that? And so we started using Post-it notes. And I told them it hurt, like when that thing you love is more of a nice to know than an enduring. But that's great because they're asked questions, or you go around the room and they might ask a question in which you can talk about that, but it's not in kind of the main structure of what you're doing. So that kind of helps with that process, because I think as content experts, we want to teach all this sort of stuff, but then we need to kind of boil it down. So I love Post-its for that reason, and I've used them that way myself.
I have a Post-it grid in my office with 15 spaces for each week. And so I put the readings and the assignments, but then I can move them around. So whenever I update my syllabus every semester, I move the Post-its. But yeah, I'm a Post-it fan too.
Yeah, I think I'll do that also for, so, you know, Wiggins and McTighe are pretty clear that this is not always a intuitive process going from identifying desired results through it. And sometimes some courses require the Post-it to kind of see what the big ideas will be. And so I've done so we have 15 weeks, right? I've done 45 Post-its with questions that I would like students to be able to answer and then start grouping them. And then I start to see what the bigger questions are that I would like them to answer. And then I can also see kind of things that don't fit within the main themes. My wife is a historian here, and she was asked to teach our research methods course, which I think a total of negative students have enjoyed before she started teaching it. There's just something about a historical research methods course that despite history being one of the original disciplines, no one's figured out until I think my wife did. But she was just like, I just don't know how to do that. And we actually did I think we had about 45 or 50 post-its in order to get the essential questions. So.
Any other questions? Actually, for a course I helped develop, I had scrap pieces of paper that I wrote out all the topics, and then I grouped them all together in 15 groups. So I did one kind of broad topic every week, and that really helped me narrow down what I can actually accomplish. I still put in way too much information in each of my lectures, but that's a good idea with the Post-its and having a board to kind of remember what I did last year versus in current years, because I didn't keep any of my little scrap pieces of paper.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things, I think this is my 18th year of teaching, is how much I've more appreciated when students reference a specific thing that they remember learning versus just saying, I liked your class. I'm from Massachusetts. I don't care if anyone likes me. That's just one of those things. But my job as an educator is to teach and have students learn. So I get much more flattered when students come to me and like, I remember this, several years later. I think that's much more meaningful to me. And I think my students do like me, but because I'm their saltiest of their professors. But so it's a little different. But that's what makes me want to teach more versus being liked. And that realization helped me think about, do I need 5 essential questions for a class when 3 will just do it? And then they really get to dive in to the topics much more. And then they have a higher chance of remembering that for later, right? And so, I kind of had that reckoning where depending on the class, 3 it works fine for me. I do find it challenging for something like my history of sexuality class, because you try to cover so many historical lived experiences. And so trying to come up with essential questions is tricky to make it so everyone's really represented. But it's just kind of the thought process. And it's much better than if I was just like, okay, I have LGBTQ IA plus. Now let me go through all the content. That's just stressful. But zooming out can make me think about how I want to frame those and things like that. And instead of specific historic questions, I actually ask a lot of, I think they're more critical thinking questions about language and power that we can look at through primary sources. So you get, just the word deviance, right? And how it's used throughout time. And so I frame it a little bit more conceptually than versus like listing, identity groups within that class. So it led to kind of a different approach that works for that topic. And I think the students are like, this is weird. I was expecting, much more specific in it, but then I think they start to see like, okay, language and power are important. And to be fair, those are the kinds of things I do as a historian of sexuality. And that's what all of my articles really do, and my book does, is look at language and power. And so it actually made sense methodologically for that. And I don't usually overlap my teaching and my research in that much of a way. I actually think the statement, my pedagogy informs my teaching, or my research informs my pedagogy is like a statement that you only teach what you research. There's so many more things to be able to teach than just what you research. So I think it's a nothing statement, but apparently job search committees love it. I was very unsuccessful in the academic job market. I had 36 interviews and no one liked me. So Christy knows I'm smart though. So
Well, I was gonna
I
say,
do know he's smart, by the
Yeah.
way.
I
Very.
think anyone that interacts with you really for very long knows that, Chris. Like, I was like, I hope you feel like you fit in at USU, because I have had a lot of opportunity to sit in on things with you and really appreciate your perspective.
So I have a question.
and we may leave if Donald Trump wins in November
Yeah.
and flee for a blue state. So I don't think we're even hiding that as something. It's just I don't know how much more I can do with that bullshit. So sorry
You're
if you're a Trumper, but I'm not really sorry.
You're not the only one. I think there are a lot of people here that feel that way.
Yeah.
Question for you.
Yeah.
So you're talking about backward design. When you choose the outcomes that you want for your courses, do you I mean, how do you decide that? Do you tie them into the job market, what they need to know in the future? I mean, you're talking history, so that's harder for me to even wrap my mind around how they would use it, at a job or something, unless they were teaching. But do you try and do that and then explain it to the students, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm pretty upfront with students, is that I'm kind of straddling the line of the life of the mind and tangible skills that will help them within a job market. So, I dissed the traditional 25-page paper, I think 3 times in my presentation. I just view it as antiquated. I just don't view it as something that's helpful. But as I think the ITLS classes here show, is there a lot of there's a couple things that are very, very in demand: project management, and then communication skills. And so I've had my students use Slack. They add me to their channel. I monitor how they're communicating. I'll give them kind of insights when they have somebody who's kind of not communicating. I've had interesting conversations about people coming in really hot and be like, that's not how you can motivate a group. And so we look at group dynamics and things like that. And I'm forgetting, Christy, the organization that had kind of the ITLS learning objectives. But I morphed them into something useful for history. And so Christy knows this, but I'm doing an MA in ITLS because I get bored. And I was unsuccessful in the job market. So I had to think about what skills were I apparently missing. So, so I used those and I transferred it to that. And I can send you my syllabus for either the 60s or history of sexuality, because I kind of leaned in a little bit more with course objectives and essential questions for those classes. And both can kind of do the trick. Sometimes I find that students can get confused if you have both and you don't really explain them or you don't break them down all the time. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, send those to me. I'd love to see.
Yeah.
I have a question. So I teach a lot online, and some of them are synchronous and some of them are asynchronous, but I'm kind of thinking more on like that asynchronous, you get like your 1 15-minute video that can hopefully keep their attention, and you're trying to get a lot of content in that 15 minutes. But then also so then I try and do like videos for their assignments and like break up. So I'm hopefully showing myself throughout the course.
Yeah.
But how do you get in what you're trying to get in asynchronously?
Yeah, I mean, the 15-minute, there's a lot of research on something called historical thinking pedagogy. And everything that they've done at Stanford with this is always pretty much a 15-minute kind of baseline, here's what you're doing. So everybody's on board, right? So you give your lecture, and then the rest of the class period's applying. So in history, it would be, here's the primary sources, here's kind of a structure for what we're expecting. And so the best approach for history teaching is what we are seeing as in an asynchronous environment. They don't want more than 15-minute videos because we all have short times attention spans. And then it's an activity and applying. And so I don't think you should look at that as kind of a weakness of the modality. I think it's a challenge to figure out what application you want. And you're probably doing that, Julie, but I know it's tough to go from the 75-minute or the 2.5 hour, depending on how you're doing that, to then feeling like you only have 15 minutes, right? But you have so much more. It's just about how do you structure that, and how do you put the instructions so that it's clear, transparent, so that everyone can succeed.
Chris, one thing that I learned, I did that AQ online teaching certification course through USU. And one of the things I noticed was for myself, you could pick which video to watch. And I always picked ones that were under the 10 minutes. And so I keep mine less than 10 minutes, even if I have to post like a few, because they'll do like 10 minutes at a time easily, you know, rather than 30-minute chunk. But I noticed that about myself. That changed for me just as a student.
Yeah.
Being like, I'll pick the shortest one, you know, even, yeah, I think that's a real issue with students and certainly for myself.
Yeah, and I have an ongoing study for my intro course, which if you've heard me, I have a choose your own grading adventure. And I tried to structure something in a way that I could see what students were engaging with and for how long. And so, but I made things that took longer worth more points. And I'm seeing that just that alone makes it so people do assignments worth more points. So if I have a 30-minute lecture, it's worth 3 points versus a 7-minute, and there's a quiz tied to this. If they watch a 7-minute TED Talk and do the quiz, that's 1 point. And so I've actually have really rich data that they'll do it if it has more payoff. So it's a very behaviorist approach to education, which is not where I think I would have said I would have been. But for the modality, for asynchronous, for a general ed, it works. So I would never teach a graduate seminar that way. But for an intro asynchronous class, I get 5s on my idea evals, and I don't care about those. But intro classes don't get 5s on the idea evals. They just don't. So I think we're switching in and out. So they're just gossiping. Never mind. But I'll remember to send you that syllabus, Christy. If anybody else wants that, just let me know. And I can also send you other. I mean, I just am building all these resources at this point, which is funny considering they have to give me a different job. But yeah. But now you get Cree, who's a much less salty New Englander than I am. So
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you, Chris.
No, we're actually Mid-Atlantic.
Oh, gosh, how many of you are there around these parts? They're small states. There's like 4, there's 3 of you, 4. I know 4 people from over there.
we're the best. So.
You 2 are the best of the 4 that I know. The other 2 is Provost Larry and Nadine. Hi. I love the New Englanders. What's up? I'm Cree. Hi, everybody. I don't know how this has been going, so I can just sit here and answer your questions. Unless no one has any.
So I do have a question, actually. I work in the sciences and the biology department, and a lot of our textbooks that are required reading have their own studies and their own people that they mention. How do you go about seeking out a more diverse study group, I guess, that you can include in addition to the required stuff that the textbook teaches for, say, like a genetics course.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a big fan of supplemental reads. So like we have our standard textbook as well. And then I just pull in all those other authors are authors that I pulled in. So one thing that helped me is working with my course librarian. So the content librarian for your content area in composition, because we're supposed to be exposing students to research stuff, we get assigned a librarian for our course. But you all know this, there's a subject librarian for each subject. And so I would just find who your subject librarian is and then say, hey, this is what I'm teaching. I'm trying to find X, Y, or Z perspectives or studies or information. Can you help me? And then that's what I did first. Like they really helped me find a bunch. When I talked about inclusive readings it was like a year ago, I didn't have anybody with who has self-identified as a member of the disability community that was being read in my classroom. And I also had no idea like how to find somebody that we could read and that would make sense for the course and that we could use to amplify course content. So I just emailed them. It's like, hey, can you help me? And they just gave me this whole list. And they took me to this repository of the Disability Visibility Project that's curated by Alice Wong. And then there's just a list of readings about everything in there that folks have been writing about. And I was able to go there, but I would never have found that if I hadn't asked them. So that would be like the first thing to do. And then I think the next thing to do would be to that was loud, would be to like think about scholars in the field. So in composition, we have we pull from a lot of places, but we have like the Council on College Composition. And so I can go to that group or that journal and look through those compositionists that are already writing about this stuff because they write about writing and I'm teaching writing. And so then I can pull in their viewpoints and see who's there. And they've made a really big move to be more inclusive and who sits on the boards, who's drafting for their journals, who's editing those journals. And so that's another place that I can go to grab readings for my classes. So those have been two. But the library, I'm always telling my students, go use the librarian. And then forgetting that I can also use them, like they're a resource for me as well. So that's kind of where I would start. And then you'll find that as you find some, you're going to find too many, like so many. And you'll have to make choices about what to do after that. But I think that's a good place to be in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course.
I have a question about this representation in authors. I started 2 years ago. Every time I have a slide or a quote or share a quote, I put a picture of the person, and I feel like that has been really powerful.
Yeah.
But something I haven't done that you mentioned is that you share the communities or groups that the author identifies with. And one of the things we talk about, I'm over in TEAL, so Teacher Education and Leadership. So we talk about bias. And in my class, and we talk about how that impacts our teaching philosophies and the way we set up our classrooms and the environment we create in our classrooms with elementary school students, just kind of how that impacts learning and teaching. And so I wondered what kind of your experience has been if you share those identities with your students before they read. Do you notice that positively or negatively impacts their ability to interpret or understand or receive the information rather than having them read first and then either discover that as they read? Because Gloria Anzaldúa shares all the time in her articles. If you read her work, you know how she identifies because she
absolutely
shares it so much, right?
Yes.
But have you noticed a difference in having students discover that or share that after they read versus telling them before they dive in?
I would say no, because I haven't tested it that thoroughly. So, but what I do share with them, and maybe you're familiar with this, so Krista Radcliffe has some great work on rhetorical listening. And so I share those questions with, no matter what class I'm teaching, they do a reading response to practice rhetorical listening. And rhetorical listening is basically like, okay, what I'm going to do instead of reading to respond and reading to like disagree with or refute or whatever, is I'm just going to listen to this text. And if as I'm reading it, something comes up for me, like, oh, I don't like how they said that, or, oh, I love this, I knew I was right about this, then I just say like, jot that down and then keep reading. So just pay attention to how you feel as you're reading. And I talk to them a lot about like, we're going to be able to read and engage with arguments that we disagree with, things that we do agree with. But the point is that you're engaging. So I really said, like, I really frame it. The whole first week of class, I'm framing our course readings. And so I think, and then we talk about bias, right? And so it's like, hey, it's not bad that you have certain biases, but you can't just assume that because a person holds this identity that you're going to agree with them, or because a person holds that identity that you're going to disagree with them. In fact, we're not even reading for agreement or disagreement right now. Do you even understand what they're saying? And what do you think about that? And I get that, like with our Malcolm X text that we do, a lot of students come in with what they've learned about him or what they think they've known about him. And then it's surprising as I'm reading some of their write-ups, like, oh, I was surprised. I actually agreed with some of the stuff that he said. Like, okay, well, great. Now let's experience this level of engagement. So I've never noticed, and maybe students get mad about it and they just don't tell me, but I've never noticed them being less likely to engage with something because I share the author's identities. And I do it really quick. So I'll be like, oh, this is Gloria Anzaldúa. She's a Chicana scholar and writer, also a queer author, and she writes a lot about borders, boundaries, and she writes in both of her languages because she's going to live in this whole way. So if you can speak Spanish, awesome, you have access to the full document. If you can't, it's going to take you a little bit longer to work through this one. Good luck. See you next week. And then we just kind of move there. And I don't know. I feel like I worried about student biases a lot more than I should have, because most of the students we get are just excited that they're reading something new.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if I hear you correctly, we're really not combating like the conscious biases. It's really those unconscious biases. So if we're just giving the information in an inclusive manner, then they're practicing this listening, understanding the content, reflecting upon how they're feeling, and that's basically getting them to their own realization of where they and their own biases.
Yeah. Yep. And the rhetorical listening stuff, there's articles and things. Dr. Jessica Rivera Mueller, she's in our department. She works a lot with that. So I got these questions from her, but it's just like the first time they read something that I think they might struggle with, I'll just say, hey, on your first read, respond to these questions. And it's just like, okay, what about your background is making you respond in this way? What about the author's background do you think might make them think this way about a certain concept? And so then when we get back to class, I'm like, all right, did anything sit funky with you? Like, did you feel it in your body, in your shoulders, in your tummy, in your brain? Why? And what are some things that can affect how we interact with others? And then we kind of jot those down. It's like, all right, well, we're going to engage with this anyway. And you don't have to agree with it, but we are going to read it and understand what they're saying and then take it in the context of our course outcomes and our course content. But yeah, I would say that you're right. It's mostly these just implicit biases, and maybe students outwardly are like, yeah, I want to read a bunch of different things. Then you give it to them and they're like, oh, we're reading this. I didn't know that. And then you just challenge them, like, read it anyway, engage anyway. And then maybe you learn something new and maybe you don't. And I'm not here to convince you. I mean, I am, but I tell them that I'm not. I'm not here to convince you that this is the truth. I'm not. That's not my job. I'm not even here to convince you to agree with me, because there are a lot of opinions that I hold that are probably bad, that I probably shouldn't hold, because I live in our algorithm society too. But what I am trying to convince you to do is you need to read this anyway. You need to engage with it anyway. And maybe there's something out of it that you will take with you, and maybe not, but it's okay. We have 16 weeks together and there will be another reading that you can engage with. But that's been my worry, right? Is like, oh, we'll read all these authors, and then my course evals are gonna be like, why is she forcing all this stuff on us? Like, she's trying to indoctrinate us to this, that, or the other. But usually it's not. It's just like, I'm really glad we got to read a bunch of different things here that I've never read before. I'm like, oh, cool. Why was I so nervous about this? So.
I don't want to take up a ton of time, and I think I need more time than this will allow, but I'm wondering if you're okay. So in social work, they just changed our, the competencies set by our accrediting body. And it's really explicit about anti-racist, inclusion, diversity. And so one way of, including that in a very concrete way, because it's obviously embedded throughout the program, for me, I put it, they do role plays, and then I added a question about like, let's talk about these issues. Did we see any of these? But I also, students aren't getting it, what I want, and I've tried rewording it a few times. I'm wondering if you and I might either meet or I can email you about how I've worded it and get some help workshopping that, because I'm really struggling with it. They aren't getting it. They're like, oh, they didn't talk about this. I'm like, but that doesn't mean it wasn't present, and I've given examples and I've tried to make it clear, and they still just aren't getting it. And so I know it's something about the way I'm presenting it that isn't, clicking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I'm just trying to find a way of, wording that where they will understand that I'm asking them to consider what of those diversity factors might be at play within this group like scenario.
Oh, so like even if the person they're speaking with or speaking to doesn't explicitly say it out loud,
right? What
are
is
there
it?
things
Even-
going on here?
Exactly.
Why
Yeah.
didn't they speak up?
Right. Yeah, those kind of things. I'm trying really hard to get them to think about that more concretely.
Yeah.
And it's just proven to be more challenging than I expected, which is a little bit disappointing in social work, but it's happening.
Yeah, well, and sometimes I think I would say that our students have never had to think about these things before, some of them. Or they've thought about it, but never been in a space where they're able to engage in it and feel like they're safe engaging and asking questions and interrogating these ideas. So we actually just hired a new, what is she? An English teacher, professor, teacher person. She's going to train English teachers. I can't remember her title, but anyway, professor of English teaching. And her dissertation research is really fascinating because she was talking about, okay, we need to, as teachers, we need to have our students engage in critical conversations about race, ethnicity, identity, language, so all those things that we all care about. So she's like, so she was trying to train her teachers to do these things, but she noticed that even her teachers themselves were avoiding the conversations themselves. And so she was like, if you're not even going to do it here, how are you going to facilitate this with a bunch of high schoolers? They're like, what do you mean? And she used an example of like, they were reading a book and it was talking about like alcohol abuse or something. And there was a chance for them to interrogate that as a group of pre-service teachers, and they just didn't. And so that's kind of what her research was looking at, and that's what her dissertation is about. But one like piece of advice that I got that was really good, because I wanted to have these conversations, but I wasn't sure how. One of my mentors, her name's Kana Chokia, she was a PhD student here. She was like, if you want to do this, just do it. Like, I was like, I just want us to have more conversation about that. She's like, then just do. Like, pick the readings, design the questions, and just like do it. Don't try to coax them into it. Just tell them right from the beginning, we need to look for these factors. We need to identify them. And if we can't find them, if we're not seeing them, then we're going to take a step back as a group and we're going to identify them even further. So yeah, you and I would love to talk and see what you've got. But I think that's part of it with all of this is like, if it's something you want to do, then just like do that. And we're lucky because we're instructors of record. So when the students walk in there, they're like, wow, you are wise and all knowing. Even based off of like my positionality, they're still like, wow, she is wise and all knowing. She has a master's degree. Like, whoa, how long have you been teaching this class? And I'm like, yep. And this is how we do things here. We're doing this. And it's been good because after the first week or two, they're like, oh yeah, that's just what we do here. And then we can have those conversations and things move forward. But there's always space for, I'm not trying to tell you to think what I think. I'm just trying to let you engage with new ideas, and then you can tell me what you think about those ideas. And if you want to know my opinion, you can ask and I'll tell you. But in the end, I just want to know what you think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and they do get better over time because they do multiple. And so I give them lots of feedback and then they improve. But geez, those first ones, I'm always like, oh my gosh, the response is, this wasn't an issue.
Well, yeah. And again, I think I feel like sometimes here we're like, well, our students were at a PWI, but I think some of it is they just never have. They've never practiced. They've never read this thing. It's not they don't want to. They've never heard this idea before. And so it's how do we ease them in to teach them that in this room, in this space, we're having these conversations and you're supported here. It's okay. We're going to learn how, and then you'll see it kind of move forward. But sometimes I think when I talk to instructors like, oh, our students, well, with their background, of course they think that way. And I'm like, I think most of them really want this stuff. They just have never had a chance to practice or read or engage where they felt like they could ask critical questions without being shut down. And we can make that space for them with what we do. Okay, I have to leave now.
Cool, thank you.
Said, I saw you had a question, so email me and I'll email you back. Just not
Yeah,
after.
thank you.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, Cree.
I'm sorry, Saeed. I didn't notice that you had a question. I hope I didn't step on your toes.
Hey. Whoa. How's it going, everybody?
Good. Hey, Neil, I'm curious what you think of the new rollout of Canvas, the syllabus thing, because I know some, like sometimes there's changes and like sometimes the instructional designers are into it and sometimes they're not. And so I'm curious what you're thinking about it and
The
how.
new design tools.
Yeah, exactly. So I use those a lot. And so I'm like, oh, I didn't even know there were new ones. So
Oh, I'm not, my initial take was not to be a fan.
yeah. Okay.
They and I still I've been having to kind of switch back and forth between them, but I actually find them a little harder to figure out, which was supposed to be the opposite. They're
Yeah.
supposed to be easier. Maybe they would be if they were, if I think they might be if I were starting there, but switching.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see. Because I think the old one isn't necessarily super intuitive, but you learn, right?
No,
Where
yeah,
like, okay, I have to go down here to put in text. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. There are some things with the new one that are nice. So you have a few more options for your module grid on the front page, and it's a little stronger, and some of it's a little easier to manage administratively. Um, so it's got some advantages, but we're still we've been writing up new content for it on our website, but every time we get in there and look at it, we're like, okay, where was that again? If you've gone in and played with it, the most important thing for me to remember has been that when you go to the plus button and you you hit anything on that plus tab, it's going to add it to the page. And then you have to go, there's a 3-dot menu that you go click on, and that is where you have the view where you can go rearrange and delete blocks. And the first time I got there, I was like, where do I go to actually, rearrange and restructure things? And it was that 3-dot menu in arrange content. So
how do we get access to it, Neil? Am I just the only one that doesn't know this already?
no, that's like the question I've been getting in the other room too. So you can switch back and forth. It's possible to toggle. In the old design, sorry, if you're in the classic design tools, there's at the top right, there's all your row of buttons. And at the top right, there's a button that's of some gears, and that's your settings. Click on that, and there's a button up at the very top of that to try out the new tool. And then that'll switch to that sidebar. And then again, when you have the new sidebar, if you're like, no, I don't want this yet, I want to go back, you'll go to that 3-dot menu. There's a user settings option. Click on that, and then you'll have an option to switch back. So you can switch back and forth. The new design tools, if you're on a page that you built using the classic design tools, when you switch to the new sidebar, you'll have an option down below that'll say, it looks like you built this using the old design tools. Open the upgrade tool. So you'll click on that, and then you'll have an option up above that tells you how many items need updated. You can just click to update it, and it'll just update the underlying code to work with the new design tools. And then you can save and keep using the new design tools. It's not retroactive the other way. Like if you've updated to the new design tools and then you switch to the old, you're not going to be able to edit the page after it's been updated with the old design tools. So be sure you really want to be committed to using those new tools before you run the upgrade. So I'd recommend actually probably just opening up another page that's unpublished or something and getting in and playing with it before you go upgrading every page in your course.
So you can go page by page. You can only if you only upgrade one page, then that's the only one you have to use the new design tools for.
Yeah, yep. And there really isn't like a bulk update option. You have to do it page by page anyway. So, and they all look a little different when you do. Yeah, the new tools, all of the themes use the same default colors scheme. So if you had unique colors before, it'll all turn into the same blue and gray. So you have to go through and recolor things, but if you wanted to. So that's why right now we haven't been in any big rush to push people towards the new one or to make the new one the default yet. So, and we probably won't be in a big rush until City Lab says we're not doing the old one anymore.
Which is usually how they make us do it, finally upgrade.
Yeah, yep, for sure. But we've got so much content on the older one. This next fall we'll be doing we will have in our course templates tool, we'll have template options for the new and the classic. So so when you go add a template to your course, you can just go with the Design Plus. The new one's called Design Plus.
So I know you don't have a crystal ball, but how long do you think will be before we have to upgrade our pages on all of our?
Boy, I hope we have at least 2 years.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm like, okay, do I have to? I can see a reason to just go in and do it if I know it's going to be, within a year anyway. I should just do it. But
Yeah.
if I've got a little time, then I would rather learn it before I go in and try and.
Yeah.
Well, and when it switches over, what happens? I mean, we don't lose our pages, right? It's just to edit them.
No, you don't lose your pages. All that content's still there. It's just if you happen to edit it, you'll need to run the update for it to work. So we still have all of the old styles and all of the styles for the old tools we have access and control over, so we can still maintain those if they start to break down. So we can keep the old pages and the old styles going as long as we want. So, which I anticipate we will. Go ahead.
So
Sorry.
kind of like the content's there, but then like if you've done any beautifying or adding to like your colors and that kind of thing, that's what you would have to update
Uh-huh.
and like
Yeah,
go
you'd
back
have-
in and basically redo.
Yeah. Yep, you'd have to redo some of that with your color schemes.
Okay.
Yep. So I expect we'll spend a lot of time helping people do that as they move. So that's what we keep students employed for too. And they need stuff to work on. So if you're in that boat, we'll just ask us to help you make those changes. So that'd be fine.
Yeah, usually what I do is I try and then I screw it up and then I have to ask for help.
So try in pages, not in your syllabus, not in assignments,
Yeah.
because pages keep a page history.
Okay.
So then if you do goof it up, then we can just roll back and try again.
Yeah.
So do your learning in pages, not in syllabi or assignments.
Good thought.
Good questions. What other questions? I don't know who else is next. I guess it's oh yeah, it's the one everyone wants to talk to. It's Rose.
We all want our templates, so we don't have to
Oh,
build it.
Yep. Do you want me to go signal for, if you're done with me, I'll go signal for Rose.
I just had like one question with building your syllabi. I know that you have like the templates and you can move things around. Is there, like, if you have a downloadable syllabi, is it worth doing more than just putting like the template up there, adding in like the skeletal version of it, and then just being like, really, you need to just look at the downloadable one? Or
If
is
you
there,
have, if you've put a lot of time into your downloadable one, like if you have it as a PDF or anyway, it looks really kind of unique and nice. I would probably just put the link in Canvas, and then when you go click to edit your syllabus, click on the link, and then you get a link options little tooltip that appears. Click on that link options, and you're going to have a choice to just auto to have it display inline and auto expand. So then when the students go hit the syllabus link, they won't have to click to open the syllabus. It'll just appear as that fancy file. I would just probably do that unless you've got somebody who needs like a screen reader accommodation, because the PDF might not be so great in that case. But or if they have any sort of a visual kind of visual impairment, then having it in the Canvas syllabus tool can be nice, because they can blow it up and screen read it and do the contrast and all that. But if you're not worrying about that, then you can just have it auto expand as a file on the syllabus page.
Yep, we're for minutes.
Oh, Rose is the most popular person in that other room there, so now they're like, no, don't go, don't go, don't go. So that's what's going on right now. I feel like I'm like the opening act. And now the one you all paid to see.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you much.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a slick floor. Hey, everybody. What can I answer? What questions? I have nothing left to present. Hi, Christy.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Marie. Oh, good. Friends are on here. Hi, everybody. I'm just here to answer questions. Tell me what you want to know.
So how do we get your templates?
Okay. All you have to do is shoot me an email. I'm rose.juddmurray, JUDDMURRAY @usu.edu. Shoot me an email, say, I need your Canva templates. And then what will happen is in Canva, I just make a duplication of those templates, and then I share it directly. And so you'll get a little email directly from Canva that says, Rose has decided to share this template with you. Once you get that template, just save it to your Canva account. And you can copy, paste. You do not, okay, let's just make this very, very clear. You do not need to, someone in here was like, I'll give you all the credit. I don't give two hoots about credit. Everything that's in that syllabus was stolen from somebody else, because that's how I roll. From the human first statement to the how to get an A in this class. And if you guys know Denise Stewardson, 90% of my good ideas start and end with something Denise Stewardson already did 10 years ago. So I can't take credit for any of the stuff that's on there. I just made it my own. So I will say the last 2 pages of my templates are always the charts where I put my class schedule and where I do my weighted assignments, where I show the value of each of my assignments. If you want to do that, even if you don't want the rest of the syllabus, copy and paste those charts or tables, if you will, into whatever you want, and then just change the font or the colors or whatever. Creating a table in Canva does take a little bit of finagling. Try not to use a template that exists. Like if you find a chart that exists, just know you're locked into the color, you're locked into the font. If you want to do a table in Canva, make your own. So go to the tables and tell it you want 3 columns with 10 rows and just go from blank, go from square one. Because I have found that the little templates, I think that's a pain in the butt. So there's my tip about tables and charts.
Awesome. Thank you.
Is somebody chatting here? I better look in the. Yeah, that's me. That's perfect, Brenna. Thank you.
Rose, what was the name? You said contact Mike who to get
Oh,
Canva?
Mike Whitesides. Whitesides is one word.
Okay.
Mike is the marketing person for USU Cooperative Extension. He runs CAS, College of Ag and Applied Sciences, and Cooperative Extension collectively bought a license for Canva Pro. And you just need to tell Mike that you would like to be a part of the, the Canva Pro account, and you'll need your usu.edu email, and you will need an index number. So if you have your own accounts, I cut mine from my research account. I have some grant money for a research project, and I just said, I'm going to use this for my presentation slides and to assist me in publication efforts. And that's how I justified that in a research account. But Mike does need an index number. It's not something you can just Venmo Mike. He doesn't want to go to jail for us. So if you don't have an index number, work with your department head and say, you know, do you have an ENG account or something like that? And Mike's super awesome to work with. And then you'll have the branding for College of Ag, USU, and Extension, which it's okay if you're not Extension or College of Ag. He doesn't care. There's like 200 people on that account. So
Yeah, otherwise it's like $14.99 a month. That's what I pay.
yeah, this is $99 for the whole year. It renews annually. It's worth it for me. I do more than just my syllabus. They do have a recording feature similar to PowerPoint and all the other things where you can make your slides and then it records you in a little circle in the bottom. If you're into online recorded lecturing, I do like to use the presentation and record tool for my online courses. I think it works pretty well. I wish we were having a conversation about how to get the educator account rolled up into student fees, because I would love to have students have access to the Educator Pro, but that's a conversation for not this audience, but I think it'd be worth it.
For sure.
That's about it, folks. That's all I got.
It was great. Thank you
Good.
so much. You inspired me.
Yeah, there was some good stuff there today. That a couple of folks in here were saying that, you know, in their printable syllabus, in the PDF, you could hyperlink back to your Canvas page, you know, that page of the, you know, inclusive readings that Cree was talking about. I mean, Marie, that's right up your alley, those inclusive readings. But, you know, you could almost drag and drop those pictures right into your course schedule of inclusive. I don't know. There's just some really cool things that I think could be done. So
yeah, I
I
agree.
did think that part would be kind of cool. to
think
stick
it'd
those
be,
right in the syllabus.
yeah, yeah, I think so too. Put the hyperlinks right in the, I mean, I use a few hyperlinks and I use some QR codes, but that could be really cool to have those back and forth. Oh, I'll also mention, I think I said this, but in Canva, you can either do a download, as each page can be its own image. So you can save like just page, your course schedule table that's normally like page 6 or whatever. I just save that as an image. And then when I'm in my Canvas syllabus, instead of like trying to make a table in Canvas, which is so painful, I just insert that image. So I take that right from my printable and just dump it in, and it's all pretty and uploaded as an image that's in the Canvas syllabus as well. But yeah, the big lengthy stuff I leave in Canvas, all the technical language that covers your rear end in case of emergency, all of that goes in the Canvas side. And I just put a single hyperlink in my printable syllabus about the plagiarism and, you know, anything that I feel like need to cover it, but it can just be a link in the printable syllabus. So yeah. Oh, they're all clapping. I think we're done. I feel like they're releasing people, but I don't know what that means for you folks.
Means we
Yeah,
get to
so
go
we
have
will
lunch.
also have a break.
Yeah, go get everybody, go hit the Maverick or the Starbucks or wherever is your place. But okay,
Thank you.
just email me
Thanks,
if you got
Rose.
any questions. Just email me. I can probably figure it out. So
Thank you.
okay. Bye guys. Am I supposed
Thank
to
you,
shut
Rose.
it down or let it go?
I just let it go.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
let it
leave
go
it.
for now.
I'm gonna leave it, but I'm gonna walk away. Bye, y'all.
Okay.
Have a good
Bye. Okay, so we are taking our little 10-minute break right now. We will ask you to stay logged in onto Zoom so you can still have the meeting chat with all of the things that I've put in, and I'm going to hit enter here. So that's just what we're going to be doing for the next couple hours. And then Shell gonna, hello. So you can turn your video off, but I'm gonna still be here on Zoom. So if you wanna chat with colleagues and talk about some of these things, we can do that during the working lunch, or you can do it by yourself, and we'll come back at 1:45 to have an actual working session to adjust our syllabi. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Yep, and just to clarify what Brenna said, this is a working lunch. You didn't just sign up to come and have a fun event and learn new stuff during spring break. You came here to let me and Brenna hold you accountable to making changes. That's what this afternoon is. So yay for signing up for that part. So you learned something. This is what I consider a workshop. You signed up, you learned something, now you're going to start applying it. So that's what this working lunch portion is you starting to work towards that. Okay. Okay, you guys let me know if, or Brenna, if you guys need anything. I'm going to be checking in on you, okay?
Thanks, Shell. If anybody is listening on the virtual Zoom, it is 1:45. So let's if you're around, bring it all in and we'll start talking about some of the things that we've been working on.
Yep. So JC wants to say hi.
Hey, JC.
Particularly to Julie and Jen. Lovely to see the rest of you too. I just don't know you as well, Christy. Hello.
But it's best conversation, so.
Oh, no, you're good. Now I'm in this laboratory by myself, so I'm gonna leave, but I just want to say hi.
You can talk to them. They actually are opening up to the group discussion. So if it's about syllabus, it's an okay conversation to be having.
Shelly, you all should know that Shelly is literally walking around the room and looking over people's shoulders, and if they're not on task, there's a very stern conversation that happens.
Is anybody surprised about that? Okay.
You should all be lucky you're on Zoom because it's a little intense in there. See ya. Sorry, I'll shush now.
You're good.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, JC, I was gonna say I got a little extra. You know how we worked on the tables, you know, the matrices for assignments. So I have another layer of that I can share with you after this if you like. I'm excited about it.
Cool. And then one other quick thing I'll say, Jen, there's this person here in real time, Alyssa Spencer, who teaches in your BSW program.
Mhm.
She has questions about syllabi, late statements and things. She's got some outdated language.
Yeah.
So
Tell her
she's
to
gonna reach
email
out.
me.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Alright, so why don't we, let's first go around and say what we've been working on. I've actually been working on converting a genetics lecture syllabus into Canvas, because I've never liked how the instructor of record has put his syllabus on our Canvas page. So I just want to see what I could do to revamp it. So that's what I've been doing.
Nice. Oh, I forgot. I forgot to mute
Oh.
myself. Sorry.
Nope, you're good. Anyone else want to share what they've been working on?
I've been.
Oh, go ahead.
I've been simplifying the objectives because in my syllabi I have course objectives and the IDEA objectives and then our social work core competencies and then the assignments. So now I just want it to be visually pleasing of like, here's what you're going to learn in the course, here how it applies to the IDEA objectives, here how it applies to our social work competencies, and here's the assignments that align with these competencies.
Did you make a flow chart?
Kinda. It's like all kind of
a table or something?
Yeah,
Something
it's like a table so you can kind of see how they all align. I have taken Nathan's and I've social worked it.
Love that.
I'm working on rebuilding a course that I never taught before, so that's always fun. I'm teaching it for the first time this semester. But I've been going through and looking at the readings and the authors and the texts that we're using because we also picked a new book this semester, which is always fun. And kind of what Cree had talked about, I haven't ever been explicit with my students about the backgrounds of the authors, even though some of the authors talk about their identities or their backgrounds or the work that they do within the research that we read. So I have just been familiarizing myself with the specialties and backgrounds of the authors and kind of checking to see as we move forward with the new book and the new course, are things as well-rounded as we want them to be. And that's what I spent my time doing.
I kind of did the same thing Julie did. Can I share? It looks like I can share. Okay.
Yes.
So so I had already done this kind of like just to get like Bloom's taxonomy stuff. I have an iteration of this that goes through and like clicks where each activity, each assignment falls on Bloom so that I made sure for what level the course was that I was in the right, you know, where I want to be. And so I changed my table or added to it to be like Nathan's with the learning outcomes, the course outcomes, the idea. And this is our professional, like Julie was referencing, our accreditation standards. We have to pick ones for our course, which we spent in our department time doing that this year in groups, curricular groups. So putting those in, and it really helped me. I have some big questions on some of my assignments. So it was really useful. I'm going to be doing that with other courses and revisiting some of my assignments and seeing if they need to be in there.
Thanks. Who else wants to share? Christy or Spencer or Saeed?
I'll share. I'm just working on, I've never put idea objectives with my objectives ever. So I'm just going through trying to match those together. I've just never seen any value in doing that, I guess. I don't know why. And now I'm like, well, that would probably have something to do with my evaluation, which my evaluations are usually good at the end, so I don't worry about it. But I mean, I'm sure students are like, well, we didn't learn this, we didn't learn this, and they don't understand that we're not going to teach every one of those. So.
Well, and isn't it
Mhm.
interesting, Christy, how you have to be so explicit with students that this is actually what we're doing in this assignment. This is this objective, or they just don't really put it together. We really have to piece those things in such explicit ways. And so it at least helps them understand, yes, this was meant to do this, you know, that they did do things they were saying they're going to do. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
What I'm working on is kind of what you do, Christy, is I'm identifying what my course objectives are, as well as what ideas, surveys, indication, what I need to kind of cross-reference those two, as well as I'm trying to do exactly what Julie's doing as I'm going through, and I'm like, why do I have this in my syllabus? Like it's, and the syllabuses are, you know, they're not originally mine. They, you know, another instructor created them, so I'm like, I have no clue what this is for. Let me pull this out, but I also need to go back and reference a national accreditation to see, you know, maybe that's why they're in there. So I'm trying to make sure it's going to be a good project for me to do. So I don't think it's going to be a day project, but it's going to be a fun project for me to do. So
yeah, Spencer, when I went through and did that, like the Blooms thing, that's why it was fast for me to do that table, because I already had some of those things thought out. But I did it over a summer. Like I worked on it, you know, all summer going through and finding things. So it definitely took a lot of time. And even once I did it, I think I did it for 2 courses, and I still need to do it for my other courses because it really does take a chunk of time.
yeah, like my last learning circle, you know, I always have these eureka moments as I have these learning circles, and like my last learning circle is like we were talking with someone from dietetics, and she was like, these are my classes, and I'm like, well, you got to look at the goal. Like we look at these goals for like Bloom's taxonomy, building that out, you know, what's the course objective is, you know, is the course objective to get them like an in-depth learning, or just give, you know, building a good foundation. And so that's one thing that I had that eureka moment over my learning circle, is like, I need to make sure I align with my course objectives, where instead of like trying to get that top level of Bloom's taxonomy where they create their own ideas, that's not necessarily the end goal every single time we teach a class. The end goal can be, let's build a foundation where, like I teach a microbiology class, my foundation is I just want them to know how to understand a flow chart, and so they understand testing. It's not going to be like, let's build a conversation out. It's, they need to do that in order for them to eventually later on in classes, so that they are able to say, you know, I know how this flow chart goes, and now I'm able to build that conversation with maybe a medical provider. So, but yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that's so important, Spencer, like seeing where your class fits into the whole picture and where you might be focusing more on Blooms. That was a big thing for me too, when it was like, okay, for a 2000 level course, maybe I want it more here. And then the 3000, 4000 level courses, I'm going to have more of the, you know, if we want to call it higher level, I don't really know if that's an appropriate way to describe that, but those other levels of creating and synthesizing things, because they rely on those foundational learning, and more like memorization kind of things. They have to know some things, just they have to get it and remember it. Yeah.
Yep, and that's why I keep Bloom's taxonomy right here. So-
Right, Sahid.
So yeah, I am a graduate instructor, so I am teaching this course for the second time. For the first time, frankly speaking, I was not aware of the importance of this idea objectives. So I was not aware until I got the email from the relevant department, and then I need to then I figured out which I can select like 3 to 5, but that was a kind of haphazard for me. But doing it second time now, I am like very much aware about it, and kind of the very purpose of going through this workshop is that having a kind of diverse idea of what other folks are doing and how I can because the course I'm teaching is social problems, and there are certain modules which are quite challenging for me to teach, and keeping in mind the situation of like teaching those courses in a predominantly white institution, and those modules are like race and racism, sexuality and sexual orientation, and then making sense of migration and immigration, and keeping in mind my positionality as an immigrant, and then a people of color, going through all those challenges. So I think I have had enough tools going through this workshop, and now having that course teaching second time, a kind of sticking to certain objectives, and then making those idea objectives, those are aligned with the course objective, and making those patterns a kind of recurring patterns. Let's say like the quizzes and the class discussion, and making groups, which I could not do well for the first time. So I'm a kind of trying to implement those for the second time, and like even getting more and more insights of that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, definitely talking with everybody who seems to have at least taught a little bit more. I myself am a graduate teaching assistant, so I've only taught one course that I designed. The last 6 years, I've been a TA for the genetics lecture, which is a 3,000 level course. So Jennifer, you were saying like 2,000 level is like the understanding, but I feel like this course is still just like understanding and memorizing processes. So one of the course objectives that is listed on here is developing skills to express oneself orally or in writing. We don't do any of that. Like it's all multiple choice for exams and problem sets and quizzes. So I feel like it needs to be updated. It used to be a 4-credit course with an active learning room, and then they reduced it to 3 credits a couple of years ago. So I was just noticing that when I was going through the syllabus that's being used. So yeah, things that you find when you actually go in and evaluate what you have.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I think, we so often use syllabi repeatedly and make changes to assignments and things, and we change that section, but we don't even really look at that upper section that's like all our policies and things and make sure, yeah, this all still makes sense. We're all still doing this. I noticed even in one of my classes this year, I hadn't updated our accreditation competencies in my syllabus. It's like, oh, just those things that you're just like, this is just a rote, like it's all the same all the time, So yeah, I think it's so important to go through and really look at it. And if we dread doing that, imagine how students feel. That's all I can think. It's like, I don't even read this. How do I expect students to be reading all of this?
Right. Okay, does anybody have questions or wants to share their screen to get some feedback on what you have been working on?
So yeah, I have a question. So the course I'm teaching, previously, obviously, I got it from my department, and it was designed that there was a midterm and then a final term. So I kind of change a lot and like brought up a lot of new things. For example, I even changed the midterm and the final term and brought about concept of research paper, not a kind of complete manuscript thing, but like let's say 5 to 7 pager. So and then ask student to turn in some kind of 1 pager proposal at the time of midterm, and then obviously the final term is submitting that whole idea, the concept, whatever. Obviously that need to be situated within any of the social problem that that is a part of that course. So like I just need to know that if any of the folks have done that before, or like what can be the pros and cons of altogether replacing a traditional course material and traditional structure of, let's say, midterm or final term with something different.
So I do something similar to that, and it's a Gen Ed 1010 course, so like anybody can enter into it. But because it's in social work, we're talking a lot about diversity and like all of our core competencies. We kind of hit on hot topics like every week. It's fun. But instead of doing like traditional tests, what I've done is we have 2 7-week assignments. So for the first 7 weeks, they're working on one big project. And it's like, I tie my weekly activities and how it can be used into their first 7-week project. And then they turn in that paper and it shows me how they see social work, how it applies to them, and then how it applies on the 3 levels of populations that we're working with. And then the second 7-week is like a big research paper. And again, I'm trying to tie my readings and the videos that I'm having on my coursework and my modules. Everything kind of like ties in and like, see, this illustrates this portion of what we're trying to ask you to produce. And then they get to put it all into a presentation and a paper. And I found that students have enjoyed doing these projects more. I can tie in my assignments to those big projects so they can kind of see how they're building off of this foundation. We went from foundation learning to applying it. Now you're demonstrating it. And so they really are showing me that they're understanding the concepts, because if they don't understand it, then you see it and you catch it in their work, and then you can kind of give the feedback weekly to hopefully they're connecting that to that bigger piece. And I've loved it. And I think my students have too. Like the feedback I'm getting has been pretty positive.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. The idea of presentation is also really cool. Maybe I'll be using it next time when I'm teaching this.
I don't know how people feel about this, but they talked about, or today we've heard people talk about letting students, like having a variety of types of assignments, which I think is important, but I also really want students to be able to show me that they understand and show me their knowledge in different ways. And so for a lot of assignments, I allow them to either submit a paper or a video assignment, and having really clear instructions around that is really important. I'm just wondering if anyone else does that, and like I haven't done it for very long papers. Usually it's for like an article review or something like that. I'm curious if people have done it on longer papers, or anything that you see as problematic with that, or if there are even other ways, of letting them show us their competency.
I have a semester-long project that I have in one of my classes, and the project has evolved across 2.5 years. But I teach elementary educators, and ESL endorsement is our focus in the class that I teach. It's culturally and linguistically diverse instruction for English learners. And the project is they have to come up with a question related to the field, either something that they're interested in, that they want to gather more information about, or a gap that they have noticed in their own knowledge of working with English learners. And then they have to articulate a question, and I call it a burning question. And then they have to meet with me and come up with a plan for how are they going to answer that question. So it gives them some experience in professional practice, because teachers all the time have questions, but maybe don't know where to go to ask them, especially as a brand new teacher. And then I let my students in this assignment, I let them choose how they want to organize the information. So they have a question, and then they have a period of gathering information. And once they've gathered their information, sometimes I meet again with students at their request, or they can just move forward telling me how they want to organize it. But they can make a pamphlet, they can make a video, they can write a paper, they can create an infographic, or like a teacher tips page or something like that, that they would share electronically or a hard copy of. And so in that's a semester-long project that we do. They have to read some peer-reviewed information or interview someone who's in the field, like a practicing teacher. They have to have their interview questions approved by me ahead of time, just to make sure that we're asking questions in a respectful manner. But I let them tell me how they want to synthesize that information into a useful way that they could share it with a new teacher or a student teacher, or use it in their first year of teaching. And that's what I do kind of for that big project. So I let them choose. And sometimes I have students that say, I don't really know how I want to do this. And then I'll give them a couple of options and let them choose one. And with my weekly assignments, I do the same thing that you do. I have students submit something before class, just so that they remember what they read and come prepared to talk about something, and have their notes on Canvas so no one has lost them. But I let them submit those in any format that they want. And they can be bullet point notes, or they can be handwritten notes that they just took a picture and uploaded. But that way, when everyone arrives to class, everyone has access to notes that they read. And we're not mixing up everything with, I think I read this for a class, or, oh, I kind of remember reading about that, but it's been a week, because my classes meet once a week for 2.5 hours. And I just want them to remember what they read and what they came prepared to do. But that's kind of what I do in my class.
Thanks. I'm writing down some notes.
On a related note, I do have a question about, so with one of the more of a dissertation project that I was doing, I had to get an IRB protocol to survey people for research. I was wondering if there's any protocols that you include for things that are more related to coursework, but could eventually become research protocols that you might need an IRB protocol approval for if you are surveying people, even though it's done within a class. If it just continues on, or the student wants to do that independent research after the class, do you include things like that in your syllabus or within your course teachings?
I never have even thought about it before, but maybe I should.
Yeah, that was just something that I recently went through for research, so I didn't know if it would apply to courses or anything like that.
Yeah, and I have a similar question. I'm planning to use one. So in my course, I have designed that in every module, student come up with a discussion post on the Canvas, and those discussion posts are kind of divided that they should post 3 original posts, and I have aligned them with the Bloom taxonomy, like whether that can be understand or evaluate or remember, and so on and so forth. And then 2 of the posts, they need to respond to their classmates, whether like it can be their appraisal, or like they agree with that, or however they relate that thing. So what I have the plan on my mind is to use one section, which is sexuality and sexual orientation from a pedagogical perspective. And I was like in a kind of fix now how I will be able to address ethical considerations and how I can use those posts, the material or whatever students have posted on that from ethical perspective. So if anybody has any understanding on that, I would love to listen.
I do know that for an introductory biology lab course, in the past, external grad students who are not teaching any of the lab sections did actually have to get an IRB protocol to use the information from our courses. So I don't know if you'd have to get a protocol before you do anything publishing wise or research wise. Maybe some of the other more seniored instructors might have any information on that.
I think it's terrible. Don't do it. What are we talking about?
Using information that students wrote during the courses to like infer research questions or conduct further research using the stats from the course for like publication or anything like that. Like, do you need an IRB protocol? Do you have to have like a policy within your syllabus for that?
No, you don't need a policy in your syllabus for it.
Okay.
IRB approval, though, working with students, most certainly. You at least need to do the short form of it, where they tell you you don't have to do the long form of it.
So that would include taking statements from students to use in your own research?
It's the safest thing to do at the university level.
Okay.
That's what we've learned by doing SOTL work through ETE. IRB says do, because there's a short form of IRB that you can do, and then you tell them what you're doing, and they tell you if you should need to go further or not. It's the safest thing to do, and it's the practice suggested.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie.
They also have weird criteria about A and B where you're going to apply something new to one group of students and not the other. They have weird criteria for that too, because I think if there's a new teaching method that could be better, you should be applying it to both. So anytime you do something like that, that's also something to talk to them about. SOTL is going to open in May, by the way. It's not open yet. Our new SOTL scholars for everyone who's earned their teaching scholar. Does anyone directly address late policies in their syllabus? I don't address it. I don't even cover it. I have a 1000 level course. I have so several of my assignments, like the lowest score of this group, and this group drops. I also have 1000 level students, and the students know that I'm willing to work with them with what's going on. I say it 800 times, but I don't actually have it written out in my syllabus because I don't want to be restricted to the syllabus on what I put there.
I write out, they have to ask, they have to coordinate with me to submit late things. They can't just submit like things and think it's no big deal. And that basically, even if they coordinate with me, that they may lose points, you know, that it's like, I feel like I try to keep mine like flexible enough so I can work with each student individually, but to make a note that is an issue that they need to be attending to is submitting work on time.
I have a late policy in my syllabus, and it says that if you need, there's one weekly assignment that needs to be turned in on time before class because I set up groups in class, or it's part of come prepared to talk about these things, submit your notes so you have access to them in class. But those notes also include questions. So sometimes I have so much information that I know I'm going to talk about that's in the syllabus and outlined, but then I have time that I have to address these other questions. So that's the only assignment that if it's late, it loses points, but everything else, if you submit it within a week of the due date, you don't need to ask for an extension. Because I found that during COVID, I was having so many students emailing me asking for extensions that I was like, guys, if you can get it in within a week of the due date, like you're fine. It's not a problem. These are the due dates to help you stay on top of things, to help you manage your time and to get the most out of this class. But if you need an extension, if you need the weekend, take the weekend. Please don't stay up until 2 a.m. trying to finish this. Just wake up tomorrow and look at it with fresh eyes. So I do say that in my syllabus that with the exception of that one assignment, and then they'll lose 3 out of 15 points if they turn in that one assignment late, because it's 3 points so that I can be prepared for class with the groups and those things. But I still want them to do the work so they can still earn the other 12 points based on the quality of their notes and whether or not they signed up for the groups and things like that before class. And now I have way less emails that I have to respond to during the week because I have fewer students asking for an extension because they know they can just have it.
And see, mine's pretty similar. I have a week grace period. Well, in my 10-10 class, my upper levels, I kind of say you have to coordinate. I kind of take Jen's stance in my school social work of if you turn it in late, I have the right to not grade it. But in my 10-10 course, I have it very like you guys have the week grace period, get it in. That's what I want, is just for you to get in your assignments. Also, too, I don't want you having to focus backward and get behind to where you can't put the energy into the big projects, because all of these little projects are working towards this big project. And when they see that connection, then I tend to see them like moving forward pretty, like the majority of them, unless they're sick. I've had a lot of like mental health issues coming up this semester. And so it's been a little bit different from most of my other semesters. So I'm willing to like work with them, and the syllabus allows for me to do that.
I think something that we talk about, you know, amongst ourselves as colleagues, you know, conversations I've had, I should say. I've had conversations with people who, you know, it's kind of like, well, why should you get 100% when someone else may have missed an event and missed out on other things in life to get something in on time? And so I definitely have strong feelings about submissions on time, except in very extenuating circumstances. But I'm curious, Shelley, if there's anything around that, if I need to modify that. I understand life happens, but I don't, you know, I mean, yeah, I grapple with that.
As is everyone in this room behind me. Everyone has a different thing, and that's why I brought it up here. I teach a geography course with about 70 students. I let them choose what 25% of their grade is going to be. And for 2 of those groups, both the current event journal, they have their lowest grade dropped. So if life happens, it happens. I don't want you going back to do it. I want you to move forward and not feel like you are behind now. And then pop quiz, one of those gets dropped too. So if you don't see it, something happens, whatever. Not that I won't help you if something else occurs, but that's just like, you can plan for this now. My research paper, because I only have like 6 students ever pick that, I let them resubmit until it's done, because I want them to learn particular skills and learn to accept feedback, because when you write, you're going to get lots of feedback. I don't have a late policy in mind. My assignments close when they close, but I have like weekly stuff due. So every week it opens on Wednesday and your homework is due on Tuesday, and it's either your current event journal or discussion, current event journal discussion every week. And it's due every Tuesday, and that's not going to change. And I'm not getting a lot of students who are coming to me with issues. I get every so often, I get a student being like, I moved and didn't take or I did this and I wasn't right. And I was expecting more, actually. I was expecting more this semester and I didn't get them. So I'm wondering if students are just not asking for help if they need it. But I do also do weekly check-ins where I ask them mental health issue questions, where I ask them what they're doing, what resources are available, right? Like if they're okay with their grades, what they feel like on assignments. So I feel like that check-in also helps me gauge where they are and address issues before they arise. But I have people behind me where it's like, in my profession, if you don't submit this on time, your client is screwed, or the judge isn't going to accept it, or you just missed the deadline for a publication for the newspaper, right? So they're trying to, yes, accept that life happens, but at the same time, teach them the skills that they need in their field. So there's a big debate going on behind me about it.
I think if you're trying to align it with the professional skills, then I think that if you're going to, if that's your purpose, then that needs to be addressed. And I think that you can put that in your syllabi as your policy, as I am teaching professional skills in the professional field. This would not be accepted. So I am teaching you now that this is so important. So your late assignments are not accepted because that's how our profession works. And I think as you tie that in, then it's basically like, here, let me put my thought process down. And that's basically why I have this policy.
Yeah, it's about being explicit with students. You know, Shelley, I used to do like the assignments wouldn't be available after, like if they were closed at a certain time. And then I stopped doing that because I felt like I had enough people saying like, oh, I need to submit this. And so it became a pain in the butt. But maybe I just need to do that because I think that actually is more consistent with what I'm telling them. You know, that they actually do have to reach out to submit something late. They can't just willy-nilly submit late work. It seems more congruent with what I'm telling them. And so maybe that's something that I need to go back to. I got to write that down.
I don't mind getting the email who's like, sorry, 1 second. I don't mind getting the email at like 11:50 being like, I couldn't figure out and have an email. Like, those emails I don't mind about. I mind about the student who like, when I go to grade and I'm in there grading and I'm like, put a 0, I'm like, hey, this is like, you didn't submit this, unlike you, is everything okay? And I normally get back, it was a really hard week. I didn't know what to do, right? Like, and then I give them the option, hey, because again, a 1000 level course for geography, do you want the opportunity? And sometimes they're like, no, I knew what I was doing. I'm fine. I'm okay where I am. And some people are like, I would really appreciate that. They'd even ask at that point.
Yeah, I did the same thing in my first course. There was a date for like availability of some assignment. Once that availability date is gone, that assignment is totally out of, nobody can access and submit it. Then I kind of changed this year, and then also kind of a little bit intervention as far as this late and like what kind of deadline on submission of the assignments. There is a 2-week grace period, and even then beyond that, if someone is willing to submit their work because of some reason they could not do it in the past, I always give a kind of margin and give a kind of message that yes, the door is open, but that does not mean that it's totally open. There are certain terms and conditions. Once, like, let's say that you are willing to submit your work that you were supposed to work 1 month earlier. Now you are late. There are folks who have done that, so you cannot be on the same scale. So then we decide, okay, your assignment is going to be graded out of 80% or 90% or 70% of the total mark. This is just a kind of like sometime for me, and this may be because of my dual status, being a student at the same time and then instructor at the. So I know what it feels like being a student. Sometimes you're really stuck, but then you cannot like, okay, and then I like, okay, you can do that. So I don't want to say simply no and kind of break their heart because they're already struggling. They're going through a phase where they wanna come back. They don't want to fall off the cliff. They want to come back. So just given a kind of opportunity that come back rather than simply saying no or kind of giving a message that door is shut. No, you can't do that.
Somewhat goes back to the objectives, right? Like, what are you trying to teach them? my students can earn extra credit points for coming and meeting with me for self-advocacy, because I know it's how hard it is to meet with an instructor and not knowing right at the jump as a freshman that like, hey, we want you to come. We're trying to get you. We're changing the name of the actual like period so that we can get you to come and see us because we want to help you, right? So I give them extra credit for that too. So I get that. Okay, I have to check on the other room. Sorry, guys. I'll be back.
And just to let you all know, so you don't take it personally, I'm having a weird problem. The city people are here digging up my street and sewer and now having to dig into my yard and ruin stuff. And so I told them I'd be done at 2:45 and they're starting to show back up here. So I might have to duck out. It's nothing personal. I'm really annoyed about it. I'm so sorry. But I'll be here until I can't be here.
Yeah, no worries. Going back to those late policies, I kind of want to give an example of this genetics one. So we have weekly reading quizzes that are due on Friday night at 8 p.m. Late submissions are not allowed, like the whole thing closes. And then in another section, we have saying you have 48 hours to contact either me as the TA or the instructor about your grade to get it changed or anything. But then he also says that he doesn't answer emails over the weekend, and that's 48 hours. So there's a discrepancy that I'm already seeing. So just making sure that whatever your late policy is matches up with whatever boundaries you set for yourself and for your students.
Well, I think whenever they say like 48 hours, that should be 48 working hours, right? Like,
yeah, it says 48 hours past the due date, which is a Friday night. So
yeah, I'd probably have them clarify that one.
yep, that would have to be modified for sure.
And I work in a graduate program, and so really I try really hard to just tell my students, look, you are adults and this is your education and I want you to be successful and I'm going to do whatever I can to help you. But what you put into it's what you're gonna get out of it. So as far as late work, I just put in there, if for some reason you can't turn it in on time, and this goes in my syllabus, please notify me before it's due, that you're not going to make it. And I'm happy to help, I'm happy to work with you. And so if a student notifies me before, they get an extension. If they don't, because sometimes honestly, they do forget. It happens. I've done it. I usually say, no problem the first time, if it becomes a problem where they are never getting anything on time, then I do sit down with them. My classes are all asynchronous online. Then I will, say, okay, we need to have a talk about this, and we just need, I'll just talk to him about what's going on. Sometimes it is some pretty significant family things that are happening. I've had students where they've had children in the hospital or whatever, and I'm like, oh, no problem. You don't need more stress and pressure, but I still want you to pass the class. So just let me know how I can help you. If I need to extend the deadlines or whatever, then I'm happy to do that. But I have had, students not turn in a couple of assignments in a row and not say anything. And I'll usually reach out to them and say, hey, is something going on? It's me caring about you first before it's me wanting to punish you first. And I've just found that if I always take that approach with them, they don't usually do it again. It's like the first one, they're like so happy that I'm treating them like an adult. Now they want to act like an adult. And I've very seldom had problems. I have taught an undergrad class, and I did have one student who didn't do anything the entire semester, and the last day came to me and said, I want to turn everything in. And because I'm going to fail this class and then I'm out of the program. And I'm like, you know what? You haven't done anything all semester. A lot of our work is group work. You can't make that up. And so I'm sorry, but you're going to fail the class. And he was pretty upset with me that I wouldn't give him a chance, but it said in my syllabus, I didn't have to accept anything. So I think it's good to have something in there that says it is up to the discretion of the teacher whether they accept it, because there are times when, like in this case, I had reached out to him several times and worked with him. And he kept saying, yes, I know I need to do better. There's really nothing, there's no reason why I can't do it. I just haven't. And then he comes to me seriously, the last day before grades are due, and it's like, can I get it all done and turn it all in? And I'm like, no, you can't. And he was pretty upset, and he was ready to go to the department head and everything. And I'm like, that is up to you. In the syllabus, it says it is up to my discretion to accept. And I don't feel like you can learn the things you need to learn in this class by doing everything in one day. So, there are times, but I think I was glad I had something in the syllabus that said, it is up to my discretion to accept or deny, or even to dock points.
Does anyone have an attendance policy in their syllabus, or what do those look like? As you were talking, Christy, I thought I do, because I have an attendance policy in my syllabus, and we do a lot of small group work because in teaching, so much of what we do is collaboration. So I want to replicate that in class. And then we have a written assignment after class that's a submission or participation submission. So basically it's evidence of what we did in class, that when you were in the small groups, you actually did the work that I asked you to do, and then you turn that in at the end of class. And it can be a screenshot, or it can be, I just do Google Slides a lot of times because it's easiest for everyone. And is your slide filled out with all the criteria? Does it show that you are using your time the way you should have? And so students who missed class can go back and they can do that work independently, but they can't make up the points that are assigned for the actual collaboration during class. And that way students who are there, that's how I distinguish between students who earned an A and students who earned an A- or a B+, because the students who are here every week submitting everything, they earn the A. And students who are late or don't use their time well in class, or who don't submit everything, they might get an A- or a B+. But I wonder what attendance policies look like for everyone. And I know your classes are asynchronous for some of you. Mine are all in person or broadcast live.
So yeah, I teach the class in person, and apart from policy, I have attached certain level of credits with attendance and discussion, because they once you are part of the class, then obviously you can be part of all those activities that have been done over there. One of them is like group discussion and so on and so forth. So obviously absent excuse is available, but the reason should be like the genuine one. And like, if you can excuse students once in a blue, but that should not be a recurring pattern. So in that case, I keep on reiterating that if you are coming to the class and then not being the part of participation, you are doing the half thing. You are getting the credit for your attendance coming to the class. Thank you so very much. But as far as the other half is that you need to be part of all those activities. So yeah, and that is clearly communicated in my Canvas thing, that this is the policy, and this much of credit is assigned to attendance, and this much credit is assigned to discussion in the class in person.
And we kind of do the same thing, like our social work program. We've talked about percentage wise, like how that breaks down into class size. And we usually, after so many class periods, you lose a letter grade. And then our reasoning for that is just because if you are not present in class, you are not learning the skills that would actually get you that kind of grade. And then on my asynchronous online class, because it's asynchronous, what I say is I've set this up as like a weekly format, you can get 2 weeks ahead. But realize that there are due dates for each week, and you're accountable for those due dates. And Christy, I wanted to say, like, I even put in mine, like, don't expect to be able to get a passing grade if you come to me and want to do the whole course in a week, because you cannot get a passing grade by engaging in the material that way. And so I put that in kind of as like my late policy, attendance policy for my online course. So I've kind of done it in both, because I've also had the experience of like the students not coming to the online courses. Like when I did a flipped classroom, they thought, well, I'm doing the work. And I'm like, but you're not showing me that you can apply it. You're not coming in and we're engaging in the material now. And so I've had to tweak it a lot as I've learned through the different platforms.
Yeah, I do a lot of group work, even in my asynchronous online classes. So, in fact, a lot. And I just tell the students, like, we talk about group dynamics anyway, and how you build a team and how you build a group and how you work in a group. And I say, you know, you have to have a lot of grace and empathy for your fellow teammates, because sometimes they can't make it. So you've got to find ways that they can still engage with the group in some way. Sometimes you just have to excuse them. You know, that's just the way it is. But they all get the same grade in a group. That's my rule. Everyone gets the same grade. But if I have a student, and I always tell them, if someone is just not, like, they're not responding when you're asking when you can meet, or they're, you know, they've just dropped off the face of the earth and they're not doing their assignments, please let me know. And it's happened once or twice where I've just got somebody who's like, no, I'm in a group. I don't have to do anything if I don't want to. Well, I tell them at the beginning, look, if you're not engaging with your group, then you will no longer have the opportunity to work in a group. And so then they have to do the entire assignment themselves to get credit. And that's a lot harder. You know, it's like when you're doing it in a group, everybody breaks it up and they all can do their piece or whatever, or help. But on your own, it's a lot harder. And I've only had to do that twice in 6 years. And both times those students failed the class, because they weren't going to do anything anyway. But this way, it didn't drag the team down, you know, the other group members down, waiting on somebody or trying to, you know, get them involved. But it happens all the time that people miss meetings, but then they find ways to, you know, either they post their notes for whatever the assignment was, and then somebody can come and add to it, or they'll open something in Slack so that they can comment and help. So I've found that they can be pretty darn creative so that they can involve everyone and still give them all a good experience. But here's this adult thing again. You know, I'm like, you're adults, this is your education. I want you to learn this stuff. And part of that is learning how to help your group. Don't let your group down. Because most students will do things for their group that they wouldn't do for themselves, as long as they feel like that's what they would be doing, is letting them down. And so I think that's worked really well for me. And I realize that's graduate program, but I use that in even in the undergraduate classes that I've taught. And it takes a little more training to train them to have that empathy and to not get upset that everyone's going to get the same grade. But once they figured that out about halfway through the class, it became super powerful for them, actually. Many of them responded in their in the end of course evaluation that was their favorite part, that they learned so much in the groups, and they learned how to work, you know, with other people and some of those soft skills. And I'm like, well, that's what I was hoping for, but just have to watch it.
So we do have 5 minutes left until we close out our full day workshop. Does anybody else have any last minute questions or comments about what we've discussed through the presentations and within this working session. Because I have one more question. So I work in the sciences and we do a lot of, at least for the genetics course, it has been converted into just multiple choice. So there's not really any writing anymore within our course, but I was wondering if other courses have any generative AI policies with written work established, or if you're thinking about including something like that.
I tell my students to go for it, but I have a different class. I'm not teaching writing.
Yeah, and I had a similar situation where I was checking an assignment and I realized that like a lot of students are kind of writing the same thing. Then just out of like curiosity, I pasted the same statement which I posed to them to the ChatGPT and realized that, okay, this is where it's coming from. So though I did not clearly communicate to the class about policy related to artificial intelligence, but then in case of that particular incident, I kind of communicated to those students and also kind of warned that you cannot reproduce the stuff or the content from ChatGPT in totality. You can use the idea or like whatever, but at least you cannot copy paste, to be very frank. Like it's otherwise just a kind of similar thing like a plagiarism. So yeah, but this is quite a new thing. We will be seeing a lot of applications and implications on academia, on teaching and pedagogy and this and that. Let's see how far things go.
Yeah, I ask my students to let, to indicate that they used, AI in which form, usually, but I tell them, I'm like, look, I can tell when you use it. I can tell when it's not your thoughts. So you have to remember that I'm expecting your ideas and your thoughts in your papers. And this will benefit them, right? But I mean, if you use ChatGPT to help you with your writing, to make your writing better, I say do that because they'll learn a lot from that. If they use it to get ideas so that they, they need some ideas to help them get started, I think that's a great use. But to just plug something in and kick it out, they're not going to learn anything from that. And I can tell the difference. But the truth of it is, we cannot prove that they used AI. So I think we have to be careful about saying, you're going to fail the class if you use it, because there's no way to prove it. I think it's better to try and help them understand how it's going to hurt them personally. If you never learn how to use your own ideas, or there's times when you're not going to be able to use this, can you still do the work? But the other side of it is, there's going to come a time when most of our jobs are going to say, like, if you can't use AI, it's going to be like, you can't use a computer. So we need to teach them how to use it and how to use it appropriately. And I don't want to say, it's not legally, what's the word? Anyway, when you're using it appropriately. Anyway, I think we as instructors have a responsibility to teach them how to use it and when to use it and how to use it so it doesn't hurt them, but can help them. That's just my personal opinion about it. There are some classes that I would really not want them to use it in, but even then, even a writing class, I think I've learned so much putting my stuff in and saying, will you please rewrite that, edit this or rewrite it, that I'm like, oh yeah, that's much better. And it helps me to write better. But I think there are probably ways you can find to even use it in writing class to help your students. So.
Right, I think it is definitely important to kind of explain to your students why, and that kind of relates to everything that we've been talking about with the transparency and all that. Why is this good? Why is this maybe not so good if you try to do this particular behavior? I just remember using Turnitin through Canvas and Moodle, and there was a lot of messy things in that, and I never liked it. So just wondering, with it becoming more powerful, and a lot of students are using it. So
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get into our last section. Yay.
Can y'all hear me on Zoom? Perfect. Hey, everybody. Oh, I gotta stand over here, don't I? Sorry. I hope everybody got today what they were expecting to get out today. At the very least, you got to make some new friends and some new collaborations. I did hear a lot of that today, which I'm really happy for. So moving forward, what do? Well, you work on your course this semester, right? This doesn't have to be done tomorrow. This can be done over the summer. Also, a lot of times, what happened last year, I think, is we did a summer learning circle based on the Springboard to Action. So instead of it being like we're reading a book, you do implementations. People join the learning circle and they present their syllabus to each other for 4 weeks of the summer. That's an option for you guys as well. Today doesn't have to be the end. If you want to make connections to have people review your syllabus, ask them, or we can talk to our Ignite presenters about doing that as well. If you want to set up a learning circle, we can do that. You just have to let me know of the interest. I'm always happy to review any materials you guys send to me. So, and we always have our Scott's evaluators again. So keep those in mind when you get done with your syllabus as well. Okay, I'm going to let you go, but real quick, the last thing I want to show you, because it comes open tomorrow. We updated the website, just so you know, it's way better. ET conference proposals officially open up tomorrow. And the theme this year is the courage to teach. So I know that we've all had a lot of issues over the last several years with students or just having the energy to move forward with changing from Zoom and changing back and expectations from the university, what's going on in society. So the topic this year we decided was really important to talk to our students about where the courage to teach. So if you're interested in doing a proposal, that's going to be open until the end of May. So there's always steps moving forward with your professional development. Thank you all for attending, and let me know if you guys ever need anything. Thank you.